I would like to welcome all of you to the August 14th meeting of the CCWD Board of Directors. Would you all please rise and join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very nice to hear a chorus of voices doing that pledge. Thanks for being here. All right, would you please call the roll?
Director Underhill,
Here.
Director Ratterman,
Here.
Director Davidson,
Here.
President Thomas,
I am here.
and Director Cicada is absent today.
All right, item 2, public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through the staff to place items on the agenda for future board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda, and comments today will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone who would like to address the board?
Michael Castro, Valley Springs. I spoke last time about the quality of the water in our community. Water was discolored, smelled and tasted like fish when you were drinking it coming out of the faucets. I will report water is, I took this sample right before I came here. It's a little clearer than it has been. There's no tinge of brown that is noticeable to my eyes anymore. But when I go to brush my teeth in the evenings, I can still taste that like fish smell in the water. So I'm hoping it's being rectified. I've had nobody contact me regarding my comments last month, and I haven't really seen a major change. So I'm hoping that something's being done to ensure that the quality of our water and our homes is suitable for drinking and that we're getting what we're paying for. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Just real quick, how often are we testing our water?
We test the water every week out the distribution system and continually at the treatment facility. So,
Okay.
and I'll address, some of that will be addressed in the presentation.
Operations report.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the presentation about the fire hydrants.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to make a public comment? Anyone online? Last chance. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. We have item 3A, approval of the minutes of the board meeting of July 10th and 24th. 3B, review board of directors monthly timesheets for July of 2024. 3C, ratify claim summary number 629 secretarial fund in the amount of $5,930,371.23 for July. And 3D, extend the agreement with Richardson and Company for auditing services for the fiscal year.
3D.
Okay,
Pull 3C.
I'll move for acceptance of 3A and 3B.
Second.
okay, moved and seconded. Would you please poll the board on those items?
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes. All right, in sequence, let's take 3C.
3C. I was absolutely floored. Well, I couldn't be floored because I was sitting down as I was reading my agenda packet, because I can't remember ever seeing it this high. You know, we're good with 2 million, we're good with 3 million, 4 million during, for the course of operations and everything. So as I say, I was quite taken aback.
It is a large amount.
Yes. So I did call the person in charge,
Yeah.
and he was able to, give me background on what it was. And
Sure.
it was just, as I say, quite a eye opener.
Right, and just to follow up on that, we are at year-end close. We're trying to close out all the expenditures for fiscal year 23, 24, everything that happened prior to June 30th. A number of these are in CIP-related projects because they're getting in all their invoices. Sometimes they're spread out over a couple months, but this is our year-end attempt because one for the auditors, but also if we have grant funds, they're really strict on ending it at the end of our fiscal year, June 30th. So the big significant change, we did have $2.1 million in CIP costs associated with this. We also had about $360,000 in FERC relicensing fees. But we do recoup that, and about $350,000 of that is going to be recouped through NCPA and MID. So we pay, as owners of the license, we have to pay the fees, but in our agreements with NCPA and MID, they reimburse us.
Yes, I do remember the reimbursement.
Yeah, and the same thing with our operating expenses that went up. It's again, year-end close. We're really focusing on getting the vendors to send us all their invoices.
Mhm. But we are working with them along the line, along the way, asking them to bill us, please.
Yes, we do, but sometimes they don't respond in a timely manner.
And so then sticker shock.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, one of them is for DA Wood, 1.287, $1.2 million. That's, I assume that's for their materials that they
Yeah.
purchased.
Yeah, a lot of purchasing of materials and mobilizing for start of construction. There's been some delays in when the actual construction activities are going to start, but purchasing a lot of materials get.
Yeah, and then another big one is it's funny. I was going to say Russ Thomas, 636,000 is right above Russ Thomas. TNS Construction for Copper Cove Phase 1 and 2,
Yeah.
636,000. So,
I think
those-
CalPERS retirement is 644.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I forgot that one too, because we prepaid our UAL expense for the year because we get a discount if we prepay versus doing it on a monthly basis.
But the CIP expenditures, I think, are it's part of the progress that we're making. I'm actually really excited those projects are moving forward. The progress that we're making on multiple fronts in copper right now is pretty remarkable. And to finally get A to B going
Timer.
is also really, really exciting. So I think in a lot of ways, this is, reflective of it's, kind of stacked up into 1 month more than it normally does, but it's reflective of a lot of really good work that's happening.
Well, as Michael and I were talking, it is, we sit up here as directors and this is a very critical part of our job. I mean,
Certainly.
to watch the expenses and to see the money that's being dispersed. And so everything was substantiated. There's nothing,
Right. And I appreciate you asking the question for giving us an opportunity to explain the differences. So everybody's aware of it, not only your board, but public as well.
I'm satisfied
Can I move for acceptance of 3C?
and I second.
They're, okay. We have a motion and a second, but is there a public comment on this item? I just want to mention that, Jeff, that this is one of the reasons that I have pushed a long time for this report that we have at leading into the secretarial fund that summarizes the CIP, how much money we're spending each month, how much money we have left. You can kind of see at a glance, one month, July compared to June, where that big increase is. And it is a big increase, but it's just totally expected. We're doing a lot of work. We're paying a lot of subcontractors and stuff. So anyway.
Well, I'm happy we're taking care of Copper Cove.
Well, I am too. Okay. All right. If there's no public comment on this item, would you please poll the board on this 3C?
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Riderman,
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes. Going on to 3D, this extend the agreement with Richardson and Company. You,
Yeah, I did want to point out, I think best practices include changing out your auditor every 5 years. And I think we had the same report last year that we were keeping Richardson and Son, who we've had since 2016. So the year 2016 audited, I think it was done in 17. But I just want to make sure that this is not a continuing pattern. It makes sense this year with two brand new people in your office and you're back now. And I know you've been in and out the last couple of years with other reasons but I do want to make sure that we focus on changing out our auditor next year.
Certainly. And I've had conversation with Brian Nash of Richardson, and he agrees that we're going to go forward with an RFP for the next fiscal year. However, one thing they do on occasion is switch principals. Brian Nash versus Ingrid, they switch back and forth who's overseeing our audit. So it does give a fresh perspective, and they switch back from Ingrid to Brian this year. And so we still fall within that category that we're okay. But I wholeheartedly agree. We're going to go out for an RFP and distribute that RFP to a number of accounting firms like we've done in the past.
Yeah, just changing the CEO or whatever doesn't quite cut past.
Yeah,
No,
right.
It, believe it or not, it does in the accounting world,
Well,
but it does not it doesn't cut mustard for us. I agree.
So you are seeking RFPs from.
We're going to be sending out an RFP towards the end of this calendar year for fiscal services so that we bring it back to your board early in the year, sign an agreement, and then they can get started for fiscal year 24-25 audit in June.
Because you will start reviewing their qualifications and all
That is correct.
Okay,
Referrals and things like that.
okay.
Now, all that being said, we are not precluding Richardson and Company of submitting an RFP, just like we did from our last auditors. When we sent out an RFP, Bryant Young, and then we were able to go forth and take care of that. And based on internal review, qualifications, referrals, we will select the best auditor available for us.
That's fine.
Move for acceptance of
Second.
3D.
okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any public comment on this item? Hearing none, want to pull the board on 3D, excuse me.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes. All right, going on to new business. On 4A, we have a discussion regarding the collaboration between CCWD and fire protection districts within our service areas to maintain fire hydrants. Hello, Damon.
Good afternoon, President Thomas, directors. So this item came up for conversation in our engineering committee, where we talked about the relationship between the different fire protection districts throughout the county and CCWD. And I wanted to start off by acknowledging the fact that fire hydrant O&M and effective operation of fire hydrants begins with a strong relationship. So I want to acknowledge the fact that we have our fire chiefs here in the room, Chief Dickinson, Chief Herzog, Chief Johnson, and Fire Marshal Parks. So to acknowledge the point that Director Davidson made in the engineering committee last time, they should be here and involved in this conversation. To kind of start off is, I think it's a known fact for CCWD staff and for folks here that work with CCWD that iron and manganese is naturally occurring in the source water for Copperopolis and for the Jenny Lind system. And so that can tend to exacerbate water quality issues, particularly when water flows increase, and it can affect our partners in the fire protection sphere as well. And so kind of to acknowledge what Mike Castro had to say about water quality, this will be discussed in this presentation. Let's see if this thing works here. There we go. Okay. So this is an overview slide of the district, and it's always helpful to provide some scope and some perspective. But one thing it doesn't have on here is the fact that we have 2,265 fire hydrants throughout Calaveras County that we are responsible for. And this presentation really covers the fact that the fire protection folks play a huge role in helping us to ensure that the fire hydrants are operational and that repairs are made in a timely manner. And so one of the things that ties in directly to fire hydrant O&M is training. And so, we live in a extremely variable topography. So we can have fire hydrants in the valley and fire hydrants on a hill, and they can be right close to each other. And so we can create pressure issues when we operate fire hydrants unwittingly. And that's both CCWD staff and fire protection folks. And so it's always important to hold training and have conversations with the fire folks about certain zones that are areas of concern. So, and meaning we might have a fire hydrant that's on a large size water main. However, if you open that hydrant to maximum flow, you're going to provide negative pressure to some customers, and that's a regulatory compliance violation. And so there's always this back and forth conversation going on about fire protection within the realm of in consideration of training. And so we need to get on some training. We acknowledged that in the engineering committee recently. It's important to reestablish those relationships, not only with the folks that are involved in management from both sides, but with the folks that actually do the work, the good work out in the field. And so it starts with training. And one of the reasons for training is the very fact that iron and manganese exists within our systems. Excuse me. And so when you max flow a fire hydrant, you can get discolored water. And so there's an image on the screen you can see of a cup full of reddish brown, dark water. And that's manganese that naturally occurs and that builds up in the distribution system. So, and there's a continual dialogue between water treatment and water distribution. You can have essentially parts per billion or parts per trillion of manganese that is unfilterable. It can travel through the voids of a water filter. And so when it gets out to the distribution system, it likes to make friends. So it finds all the other manganese and it sits on the bottom of the water main. And if our staff don't have the bandwidth to unidirectionally flush or aggressively flush that manganese out, if there's a water main break or if there's a fire and there's a high draw on that system, you're going to stir up iron and manganese that naturally occurs. And then folks, unfortunately, are going to see that in their home. And that's an issue that we continually work to improve. And one of the components for fire protection and the fire hydrant maintenance coordination is that we don't needlessly or unexpectedly cause that issue. So we're constantly talking about that. And so what happens with a fire hydrant inspection? So CCWD will pay $25 per fire hydrant for essentially a static test of the hydrant. Does the stem operate freely? Is it easy to open and easy to close? What is the static pressure? Are the threads greased on the hydrant outlet? Is it visible? Can you see it? Is it covered in bushes and brush? Does it need to be cleaned? And so our fire protection folks help us in that effort. And that you can see basically the cover page of Jenny Lynn Fire Systems fire hydrant breakdown. And then that sheet that's kind of sitting behind the red writing is a description of the inspection. And so invariably we'll get these inspection reports back and it will say, you have 19 out of service hydrants, or these 10 hydrants were hard to operate, difficult to open. Please address. And so then the district field crews will schedule time, generally with a construction crew, to either rehabilitate the hydrant, replace the hydrant, or operate the hydrant and kind of,
So,
fix it back up.
so explain to me what the fire district actually does. Do they actually get flow out of the fire hydrant?
They don't generally flow the fire hydrant. They static test the fire hydrant because of the fact that we can stir up iron and manganese.
Because I feel like they used to do that.
So there's kind of a yes and no component to that. So when you consider, and I'm going to get to ISO in this presentation, but when you consider ISO and the importance to flow test, the district will coordinate with the fire protection district to flow test the fire hydrants. And that may have not occurred in the past, and that may have occurred in the past. However, the most recent effort that we had in relationship to a fire department and ISO was the Jenny Lynn system, where there are a couple identified hydrants that the Jenny Lynn folks requested we flow test, and that's what we did. But when it comes to general O&M, we're asking that they don't because we don't want to stir the system up. Now, there could be, and this is kind of speaks to, I think, a stronger relationship in the future. There could be a point in time where the district says, hey, folks, we went ahead and flushed this area. It's really clean. If you guys need to conduct a flow test independent of ISO, if you have any questions about what the flow is here, let's get together and do that work. Obviously we need to consider that in relation to everything else that's cracking at the same time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We've been charged $25 for several years, and you don't anticipate that cost going up?
I anticipate, yes, that there will be a
Yeah,
request to increase that
because
cost. Yes, absolutely.
As
Let's not have that vote by the audience today.
Yeah.
Let's wait.
Kind of. Yeah, I think we all acknowledge that there's material supply cost changes that have happened since the program's been implemented. Yeah, absolutely. So the following pictures are just some illustrations of what our staff do to basically place a fire hydrant back in service. You can see the good old fashioned universal sign of an out of service fire hydrant is a bag, right? We do have, if you look in this picture on the right, we do have out of service rings that we can put on the operating ports for the hydrant as well. One thing that's a huge issue for CCWD are guard valves. So I'm sure you are going to have constituents that ask you about fire hydrants that have been out of service for years. And often those hydrants, and there's a very small amount, let's just acknowledge that. But those hydrants that have been out of service for a number of years or 2 years are generally because they don't have an isolation valve, what we call a guard valve, in order to shut the hydrant off. And in order to facilitate a repair or a replacement, you're going to have to shut 1,000 people off, 2,000 people off. And it's not that we can't do that. It just takes coordination and it takes teamwork that we have to ramp up a broader crew or more broad crew in order to get the work done. We did a lot of that last year. Yeah, go ahead.
Is this where the PRV issue comes in?
It is linked to volume and flow to fire hydrants, but it's somewhat of a separate issue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Damon, I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
I should have asked this back when you could faintly see these numbers on the sheet behind. But if you have a discharge orifice, they're 4 inches, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. And I see that there's pressure consistently at 100 pounds or more. Can't you kind of interpolate what the flow would be?
Yes, it's a great question. So yes, you can. And so you can calculate, I think it's 1 flow test for every 5 fire hydrants, I believe. And then you can calculate the output of those others based on pressures. But that's kind of a long rabbit hole that you can fall down in when you start to consider dynamic and static pressure.
Okay. But the other thing that kind of popped into my head, where you have a fire hydrant and it's hooked to the main.
Yeah.
And you have adjacent houses that are also subjected to that 105 pounds of pressure. Do we have instances where we're blowing seals out of dishwashers and stuff with that kind of pressure?
Yes, we have had issues in the past where we have blown up water heaters and the like. Yes, we're very sensitive to that. And if we can get the jump on issues with the system, we can generally shut folks off at their meter.
Well, I wasn't suggesting that we should have a black eye for that, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we make an attempt to communicate to the adjacent homeowners that you have very high pressure in your area, you might want to consider having the pressure reducing valve
PRV.
on site.
Continual conversation.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
continual conversation between customer service and operations back and forth and to the customer. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. So here you go. Pushing volume through the hydrant after all the internal components have been taken out, and then putting the hydrant back together and placing it back in service. So back to the unidirectional flushing and naturally occurring manganese. This is what our staff sees, and this is what the fire departments see. And we've had some candid conversations about how this can be a challenge when you're trying to fill a fire truck with water to go fight a fire, and you're worried about the condition of your fire truck associated with iron and manganese. And so the same consideration to the customer is reflected through the fire department. And so it's a challenge that CCWD is continually working to improve upon.
So were these pictures taken right in Mike Castro's neighborhood, right?
They're in that service area for sure. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. And so you can see this. And so these pictures are our staff, scheduling time, understanding how the water flows through the distribution system, and then isolating sections of the distribution system to actually increase velocity through whatever pipe it is they want to flush, and then purge the iron and manganese out of the system through a fire hydrant.
Damon, is it a low elevation issue more than a
For us, it is. Yeah.
high elevation? So we know the locations that this stuff likes to accumulate for the most part.
Yeah. And so kind of as I was actually working on the presentation, refreshing the presentation for this board meeting, I had a conversation with a couple of our treatment plant staff, and we're refreshing the conversation of what can be done at the facility. Is there something that we can do long-term, some sort of improvement to try to sequester iron and manganese in a better way or a more efficient way? And if it's not at the treatment facility, what can we do right out of the distribution system or right out of the clear well? And so those conversations are refreshed and are happening again. And so this is how we flush, so we flush from this color, which is this fancy orange, racing orange color, to clear on the image on the right. And we flush until it's clear. So that could take an hour and a half, 2 hours. And so when you consider water conservation and all the regulations that are moving forward, it's important that we account for the volume of water that we flush, because we can actually document that against water loss.
So this could have been part of your problem, right?
So
Yeah.
Because you were talking, the description of what you were saying,
So any number of
It sounds like-
circumstances, right? So
Uh-huh.
So this is kind of like a continual conversation. It could be a construction company is working, they're building a house, and they have a construction meter on a hydrant, and somebody floated too fast or wasn't educated on the conditions of iron and manganese in the system. It could be a fire. It could be a water main break. There's so many things that are happening in the dynamic situation.
But all the underground that's going on in La Cantera right now, it's got to have everything just, stirred up.
Exactly.
Even just the equipment, tracking across the road,
Right.
jar that stuff up. So
That's
it's
right. So
Already.
we're aware of it, we're sensitive to it, and we're on it, and it's a focus of ours to improve it. And so let's talk about ISO. So there was a question about ISO. The Insurance Services Office completes a document called a Public Protection Classification. And I think you guys are allowed to do this every 4 to 5 years. And this is essentially an assessment of the ability of how well the fire department can serve your community. And obviously, the water system plays a huge role in that. Actually, a 40 credit rule or a 40% rule. You're gonna evaluate this from 0 to 100 in the grading parameter. 40% of that grade is the fire protection system, or the water system, excuse me. And so this is kind of a list of, the high points. The system supply accounts for 30 credits, hydrants account for 3, and then the inspection and keyword flow testing account for 7. And so the other 50% is on the quality of the fire department. There are a whole host of parameters on which the departments are reviewed. And then there's a bonus for emergency communications that folks can get. And so when the ISO effort crops up, generally we'll get we'll talk with fire folks about, is there a way to improve the system? And you can bet that CCWD is going to do everything we can do to coordinate with our folks to improve ISO. And so I believe within the past few years, there have been improvements in all of our systems, which is documented in the staff report. I think, Jenny, is it a 3 now /3Y? And then copper's at a 4. And then the pass, I believe, is at a 2. Yeah. And
is 1 or 0
sorry, 1 is the best, 1 is tops.
and 10 is
Ten
worse?
is the worst, yeah, it's the lowest, yeah. And so there's a variability with how these are scored also, in the fact that if you're, 10 miles from a fire station, your rating, so if you think about this, these have a direct, I don't think we've touched upon this, these have a direct reflection on your insurance rates. And so if you.
Or even the ability to get insurance.
Right, exactly. And so that's part of the topic of conversation is how can the water system be sensitive to that end and do everything that we can do to ensure that our folks have the lowest rates possible.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the reasons I wanted to, bring everybody on this is it's been such a big issue in Calaveras County with people losing their fire insurance and the education, even just this education about when people go to purchase a home, because I'm curious as to why they'd be getting canceled if our ISO rating is positive. I mean, perhaps they're just outside the fire district boundary or what, but I mean, I want to find out, it's not a discussion necessarily for today. It sounds like Francisco wants to talk about it, but I'm curious. I mean, it seems like we've all of, together, we've done a pretty good job in bringing these down and we're still working on that. Seems like we've got a decent ISO rating throughout the county. But yet people are getting canceled and I'm just, that's not a question that I can answer today or anybody here, but
Yeah, right.
but I'd be happy to hear whatever Francisco wants to.
I spent 37 years in the insurance industry and we get a report from our underwriters when I worked for Farmers Commercial Insurance every year, and they had different tactics that they were using that year. A lot of it dealt with in the Midwest with roofs. They're not going to do any roofs because of hurricanes and tornadoes. So they did a lot of businesses and no buildings. And the other things that they decided to do is just some carriers have just decided and finding this out at working with the JPIA, some carriers just said, no more California. Why do we need? We can insure anywhere across the world. Why would we insure in California with what's going on with wildfires? They just decide. Other carriers say, we already have a house on that street. In the event of wildfires, we're not going to. And these are all the decisions and factors that go in. I talked to I'm getting canceled where I live in San Andreas, which isn't really a high. I wouldn't consider it a high. If someone visited it, they wouldn't consider it a high fire area. But I'm getting, I've been canceled by Nationwide, by, I have Farmers now. I'm being canceled in November by them. And I'm going to have to go to most likely California Fair Plan, and then a difference in conditions carrier for the rest of it. But I contacted USAA yesterday. They are not writing insurance in Calaveras County, period. They're not writing new insurance. They already have insureds, but they're not. So and every underwriting department is going to be a little bit different on where they're taking on risk in this area because they already have risk here. Yeah. So there's a myriad of reasons why besides this ISO rate.
There's one other issue that I'll get off this insurance thing, but I'd like to know the boundary of the wildland, California wildland, because the conditions are different for construction, for all sorts of things. And I'd kind of like to know if that boundary is being accurately portrayed in Calaveras County. And I don't know that it's really a water district task, but it's something that if we have the knowledge of that, because it's kind of like the old FEMA flood maps. When they first came out, they were just like a felt pen drew them out, and there was no science behind it. And I'm just curious if there's actual science behind these wildland areas that are being deemed so in California. But I'll get off that.
We are going to see some of those boundaries in 4D, I think it is. No, 4C.
Oh.
Kelly's presentation later today.
Okay, great.
We'll show some of that.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's my presentation. Any other questions or comments?
Francisco, you had your hand up earlier. You want to come up and make a comment?
Thank you, Francisco de la Cruz, Valley Springs. I share the experiences of Director Ratterman in finding out that ISO used to be the #1 only game in town. And now they've got AI with satellite imagery, identifying what type of roofs you have, what kind of vegetation overhangs on your roofs. And they're doing a lot of that from a desktop. And it has nothing to do with the ISO score. It has more to do with what their underwriters have said is the risk profile as a result of AI research that they've done and categorized almost every place in California. You can subscribe to this service if you're an underwriter. I tried to buy a subscription. They said, no, we don't sell it to consumers, but it essentially identified every roof type and the dangers by zone. And then we have CAL FIRE going through with their broad brush, as you described, painting everything with high fire severity zones. You know, the first edition, our house was in a high zone. This edition, it's a very high zone. In the meantime, I've spent $20,000 clearing it. And so it's way broken. And I'm hopeful that with the combination of the expenses that CCWD has to incur to improve the infrastructure and whatever the fire department can do, as well as the Office of Emergency Services to get this fire-wise community stuff moving, we can start to address the rise in insurance rates. But right now, we're all on our hands, unfortunately.
All right,
Thank
well, I appreciate that information. Damon, I have one last question. Going back to the AB trans, well, first of all, how many miles of pipeline do we have in the Jenny Lind?
Jenny Lind, help me out. I want to say 100 plus. Yeah.
100 plus miles of pipeline
Yeah.
in just the Jenny Lind treatment facility.
Yeah, that system. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
right.
which is crazy. But the relationship to the AB transmission line and the improvements that's going to make for the Jenny Lind area.
Yeah, so
go over that.
Yeah, so increasing the capacity of a pipeline from A tank to B tank, which is this Jenny Lind transmission pipeline or A to B pipeline, will actually allow us to provide a supply to the B tank zone, which feeds 1,000 plus homes at the farthest end of our system much more quickly and much more reliably without increasing pressure to everybody in between. So the focus is improved flow to that system and that part of the system while it reduced pressure to what you talked about earlier about pressure to all the folks in between. That's
And we're going to be doing some fire hydrants along the way.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. How many do you know?
I'm not sure of the number, Kevin. I don't know if you know.
No, I don't. I think it was like 10 or 12.
The gentleman who's doing the construction said the number, when he did, it was a lot.
It's like, yeah. It's like 20.
And just lastly, my last thing I'll bring up is, how far we are from a new rating period for the ISL. You say every 3 or 4 years. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so that
where we are in the,
I want to say copper is coming close to another round, or you're a couple years out. Oh, you guys are all the same. 2022.
that was the last
So
one.
2026, 2027, right through there. Right when we drive our electric cars up. We can.
We'll get to that later. Right? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Damon. I appreciate that. And thank all you guys for coming. I appreciate that. And obviously, if there's anything you want to add to our discussion, feel free.
Are they here to collect a check or something? $25 a, sure,
Go ahead.
come on up. All for you. Oh,
Just real quick, I know Rich had somebody just page him. I just. That's why he's the chief.
Oh, good afternoon, Ralph Copeland, Copperopolis. Dry barrel fire hydrant salesman for 35 years. I've got a couple concerns. I notice you have ease of access to these hydrants. There's a few hydrants in Copperopolis that are barely above ground, where the operating nut is right at ground level. That's a big concern I see. Hydrant gate valves. I'm concerned how many hydrant runs that do not have a shut-off gate valve. I'm talking in general through your whole system. Yeah, the next question I have, you mentioned the hydrant outlets. You got two 2.5 inch outlets. Is that a 4 or 4.5 inch pumper? 4.5. Well, 5.25 to me, very poor. Okay, well, what I'm getting at is, are outside agencies able to hook up to our hydrants? As an example, East Bay Mud requires 3-inch rather than 2.5-inch nozzles. So I believe after the Oakland Hills fire over 30 years ago, with the problem with the East Bay Mud 3-inch outlets, stations were required to have various adapters on their trucks. So I don't know if you have outside help coming from other counties. I'm just hoping that their trucks can hook up to our hydrants. Also, I'm assuming the inspection duty may go to the low man on the totem pole at the fire station? No? Okay, I take that back. That being said, everyone can always use a refresher course, and I'd suggest once a year, CCWD contact their dry barrel hydrant representative and come out, bring out their testing hydrant for a dog and pony show to educate the fire crews that we have out in the system. I think that'd be very helpful to see the tear down of the hydrant. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Okay. Come on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Herzog, Fire Chief, Copperopolis Fire. Just want to reiterate with Damon with our hydrant program down there. We fully support flow testing the hydrants. I know it can cause some issues with the manganese and iron, was it? But it's something for us that we can account for and surely know we have the correct fire flows to our hydrants. The static pressure is just one portion of it. But we truly need to get a fire flow. This doesn't need to happen every single year. We can phase it out in certain zones. We've been talking on it off the side, but we can make notifications ahead of time, make sure people are aware of things. I don't expect to do all 486 in 1 year. We'll phase it through, but it's really important and paramount for us as a fire protection, knowing we have that adequate water supply, because it can range from 499 or less over to 1,500 gallons per minute. So again, just want to make sure that we can get back into that component of doing some flow testing down the road, work in conjunction with CCWD. There's a lot of great devices out there now that reduce the amount of water flow. We used to have to send, hundreds of gallons of, water down the street. There's technology out there that can reduce it to one person, reduce that amount of water being wasted. Just want to put that out there to explore that down the road. Something the districts could share, device, through all of us. But again, just appreciate having you guys invite us out here today. And thank you.
Hey, Scott, I got a
Yeah.
quick question. How do you get the static pressure without the water flow? Just curious. I was going to ask Damon.
You put we have a cap on it. They provide us a cap with the pressure gauge on there. So you fix it onto the 2.5 side. The other cap's on the hydrant. You operate the stem. So part of the testing, make sure the stem's moving freely. That will will bleed off the air, capture a static pressure on the
Gotcha.
itself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mike Rogers from Valley Springs. Damon, thanks for the report. As always, very, very informative. Thanks to you fellas for coming and educating us lay people on how these things work. You talked about the isolation valves and the need to install those. You had about 52 grand, you said, for maintenance in the budget in this year. I'm assuming that does not include replacement of or addition of isolation valves, and if not, what would you forecast the cost of that to be if you were to install isolation valves at all hydrants, roughly? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So that cost could allow us to get roughly between 10 and 15 hydrants and guard valves installed, depending on
For the year.
Yeah, well, for this fiscal year. So this is just a budget of 52 for this fiscal year. So that's
Did it include?
Yeah.
10 or 12?
right.
So,
And so also bear in mind, within the operational budget, one of the things that the directors approved is materials and supplies. It's a ledger within the operational budget that allows us, should we decide, hey, we're going to replace this valve in this section, independent of the CIP project, we can go ahead and do that. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, any other public comment on this?
Are these valves you're talking about, is it a requirement that it's on each fire hydrant, or can you have one that covers 4 hydrants at a time? Okay.
Yeah,
You
the focus,
don't want to go in.
the focus should be on the individual fire hydrant. And one thing to acknowledge is when a lot of the fire hydrants were installed originally, it wasn't a specification requirement to have an isolation valve for the hydrant. And so what the district is doing through, it's essentially O&M and renewal and replacement, is to basically bring these systems up to specification, current specification. And so, yeah, that's the focus. And it would be a guard valve for a fire hydrant. Yeah, 1 for 1. Yeah.
Plus, back when they were installed, the cover wagons, they didn't cause that much damage.
Damon, you may recall several years ago, I asked you whether we have the ability to freeze a pipe to isolate it. So is it time we thought about getting a freezer blanket? And
We may actually have one. We'll have to dust it off and see if it can actually still freeze. But yes, I have seen that done in the past.
that seems like I mean, if it works without any downside,
Right.
it would sure make these public notices unnecessary that, hey, your water is going to be off from 4 o'clock in the morning until 6 or whatever.
Right.
Why don't we do that? But
Great point.
That's-
Definitely something to consider.
let's look at that. Maybe we could use it.
Okay. So the one that we have now will only do up to 2 inches. So we'll definitely look at it though and see what the cost is for
I-
a 6-inch.
Maybe you could bring that information back to the engineering committee when you get a chance.
Absolutely.
Okay, and there must be other uses for that. We could make ice cream and,
All kinds of stuff. Yeah.
okay. Oh, and the other thing I wondered, if iron is one of the problem or causing part of the problem, is there any way that you could put a cathode isolation, mechanism in there to capture the iron or the manganese?
So we dose polyphosphates and zinc orthophosphates to sequester any minerals within the water supply, and really to protect the original focus is to protect the public's home plumbing. So if you have old plumbing in your house, or if you have a lot of copper, this will coat that piping. And my iron generally occurs with the manganese. Manganese is really the culprit. Iron is just its sidekick, so to speak. And there is cathodic protection on some of our larger mains. But we always are looking at that orthophosphate and that zinc dose, and we will optimize it as necessary. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, if we have no further comments on this, I guess we can move on to
Thank you, Dan.
4B.
Thanks, Damon.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Damon. Are we the Aero Fire after action report?
Thank you, guys. We were hoping to get something before you in July, and unfortunately, just so many work efforts have taken place. Here we are on August 14th with the Aero Fire after action report, but I thought it was really important to bring folks into the room to talk about what we did right, what we feel like we can improve on, and really just kind of run through from a CCWD lens a breakdown of the Aero Fire. So timeline of events, 3 o'clock on Monday, the 17th of June. Most of our staff get off at 3:30. A lot of folks are working early because it's summertime, so they're getting off at 2:30. So we get notice of a fire actually near Russ's home. And we take a look at and let me just kind of address really quick. I mean, the fact that we can have this watch duty app, and I don't know if you love it or hate it, this information that we're able to get nowadays compared to when the Butte fire happened is just fantastic. And I really do feel like the real-time updates and alerts allowed us to kind of get the jump on some of the things that were happening while everybody was trying to work to kind of set the stage to prepare to combat this fire. And so When those alerts came through, and we realized the rate of spread and the direction the fire was going, working to really just get a hold of staff to retain them, to say, hey, can you hang back? We're going to need you in copper, was one of the key components right out of the gate. So from 3 to 4:30, I would say, ensuring that staff were going to be here and available and ready to kind of enter the unknown, to be perfectly candid with you, was really important. And so you can see the bullet points, retaining key staff was critical. Like I talked about, the apps and technology was key to gaining early information, which allowed us to prioritize our objectives. We saw where the fire was going, and the fact that it was traveling basically to the east of Copper, and in fact within an hour across the highway, allowed us to understand what we needed to do to prepare for the fire. And so really the focus is in Copperopolis. We have a very complicated wastewater delivery or retrieval system, I guess you would call it. We have 31 lift stations around a lake. We have a large community that lives on a lake. And then we have a water system that has identified pinch points that the capital improvements program is working to resolve. And so we know those inherently because we work with the Copper water system every single day. And really kind of in consideration of the mission statement and the vision to protect, enhance, and develop our watersheds and to provide safe, reliable, cost-effective services. I mean, I just can't say enough great things about our guys. I mean, just fabulous work effort, and our girls, everybody in the office. We had folks stay back in the office to prepare to coordinate with whoever they might need to coordinate with. We had 15 field staff out in the field. We, first things first is understand the communication of our wastewater lift stations. We want to make sure those are communicating with the treatment facilities so we can understand volumes, flows, and whether or not we're going to have overflows and spills. And then power outages reflect our ability to supply water to parts of Copperopolis. So right out of the gate, when we have staff responding from Vallecito, they're going to trailer mount a generator and bring it over to pump stations in order to operate those pump stations and continue to supply water. So we knew our objectives, and we focused on those objectives as the timeline continued to push forward. And I want to acknowledge Baljeet and Eric Holt from Calaveras County OES, because they propped up an emergency operations center within an hour, and folks were beginning to report to the operations center. So from 3 o'clock to 4:30, we go from, okay, it's Monday, everybody's leaving, to I'm going to head over to the EOC, and we have 15 guys in the midst of a wildfire. I mean, hour and a half, just like that. And water supply is a huge topic of conversation for this fire protection. And so this is 4 o'clock on Monday. And so AIM has filmed this. This is Town Square. And I mean, just hats off to the fire folks. And I think Chief Herzog and Jeremy Wood, our distribution supervisor for Copper. I think you were over at Chief's office all the time over at the firehouse, and there was a huge coordination effort there. And so these are all the positives, right? So everybody communicated quickly. We knew where the fire was going. We didn't. So I was in the EOC in kind of late afternoon into the evening, and just wanted to acknowledge you, Eric, for propping up that EOC so quickly. And so we were in the EOC in the evening, and with all the smoke and and the work effort, you're not really paying attention to actually your surroundings in a broader sense. You know exactly what's going on, but overall, half a mile away or a quarter mile away, you might not necessarily see what's going on. And so one of the components that we talked about in our after action report on August 3rd was that it's really critical to reestablish radio communications here at the district, because we don't have an effective radio comm system. We're working on bolstering that now, but that would allow us to talk real time, because when I'm in the EOC, I'm going to have to rely on text messages.
Well, it sounds like that's another component of that ISO rating also, right?
Well,
communication or no?
Well, so that's for the fire department, but it definitely could be for us. We could actually convey that to the folks in the fire protection areas. Yeah, absolutely. So while I'm in the EOC and we're working on consideration of the more broader aspects of the district, This is our copper tank right on Main Street, surrounded by fire. And so that's a pretty compelling image, in my opinion.
Communication.
And this is the trailer mounted generator that kept water in this tank throughout the duration of the fire. So this is a mighty champ of 100 gallons a minute pumping away. You know, I always tell folks that, you know, who think about water treatment, somewhere on a hot summer morning, when you're waking up and you're starting to jump in the shower, there's an operator somewhere freaking out because you're about to run out of water. And this is kind of the theme of copper, where we had operators reviewing tank volumes and conveying to me in the EOC, and then ultimately at the CAL FIRE Incident Command Center, they can't pull from that hydrant anymore because we're gonna run out of water with that in that zone with that tank. And I do want to acknowledge that the evacuation of the community was a huge benefit to allowing us to get the work done that we needed to get done.
I know we spent millions of dollars on generators, but it looks like that one there
That
been
one's,
around for a little while.
that one's been ticking for a while. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And so here's kind of a overhead image where you can see the upper left of the image is our copper tank and the elementary school over to the right by the ball field there. And this is the hydrant, the ever overly used Coppertown fire hydrant. And so one of the things that was a lesson learned from me is, as I'm conveying to the fire protection folks, hey guys, we dropped this tank 8 feet overnight. It's going to go dry. If you keep pulling off of it, we're going to need you to move to this zone. I would convey that information, and then I would consider that information effectively communicated to everybody. And so what word coming back from our folks in the field is, no, nobody's getting the message. And so we acknowledge there's a ton of chaos out in the field fighting wildfire. And so I think one of the things that we can improve moving forward is we've talked about crafting, and this is kind of an idea that Kelly had, crafting SOPs that allow us to kind of think quickly on our feet. So some of the things that you don't consider immediately, throw those into that SOP so that somebody can just glance at it and say, oh yeah, we need to confirm with the battalion chief in the field, or confirm with any fire chief in the field that they're getting the messages that we're getting. And so we can have this 360 communication. And also, things that you don't necessarily think about, minute one, does an operator kind of think, I need to automatically kick all my pumps on and just not even worry about overflowing a tank, right? I mean, so this is where we were. We were at turn all the pumps on, and if the tank overflows, that means the fire's out. Great. If it doesn't overflow, that means we're not running out of water, but we're going to try to keep them in water. Yeah.
Just before you change that slide.
Yeah.
Just an afterthought. I mean, how many trucks pulled up to that hydrant?
Well,
Well, I look at it and I don't see, 40,000 pounds of graded area out there.
right.
I mean, we could have lost that
Yes.
site.
We
Could have got stuck. So it's just one of those things that we need to keep in mind when we're out there seeking federal funding. If we're, if there is an opportunity for fire, I mean, I would like those hydrants that we know that are public like that, that are the most used, we ought to be trying to build a landing site. I don't know if that's our responsibility or the county's, but it's just from me looking at it,
Yeah.
looks like a big mud puddle.
Yeah, exactly right.
I've seen a lot of equipment stuck in the mud, and that's the end of the day.
Yep.
Well, we should just start looking around for that sort of thing,
Yep. And so obviously out of service hydrants are a huge portion of this. And so what we ended up doing, rather than tell folks, hey, don't pull off the corner of so-and-so street, we just go bag them. And then we would pull the bags off when that tank was allowed to recover, and we could pull from a different zone. What we have in Copperopolis is we can discharge water out of one zone at a faster rate than we can actually fill it. And so it creates these challenges where you have a huge draw on a tank, and we have this the inability to fill it at the same rate. And so we have to really just kind of work with folks to manage volume. And all the fire protection folks were great in this effort. And so one of the other things about the fact that the whole community was evacuated is we had service line leaks that were in tricky areas that are heavily populated. And so our distribution crew, hats off to them, went out and fixed leaks in those areas because there was nobody in town. And so that allowed us to get into the areas where, you know, in front of businesses and fix service lines. So creative ways to do work is a huge component of what our guys do, and I think that should be acknowledged. Here's some images just of the fire. This is looking away from our copper tank. And so June 19th. So really what we experienced is that as the fires, you know, as the fire protection folks started to gain a foothold on the fire, you know, the mop up is really where a lot of our water was used. And so that was really when you talk about folks from different fire protection areas in different cities and privateers, they were all over this fire and they were using our infrastructure to mop up. And so that was kind of a lot of the work. And our guys were out at all hours from sunrise to sunset into the night. So when you start a generator up, you have to go back and refuel that generator. And so if these fuel tanks are small, we need to schedule timelines of when staff were getting up at 3 and 4 in the morning, refueling generators, leaving at midnight. I mean, this was a really concerted effort, and it's a testament to our guys and their dedication and our folks in the office working to respond to their needs. Here's a picture of another fire hydrant. So when we pulled them away from one, we would direct them to another, and they'd go get that water, and then go mop up what they needed to mop up. What we learned also on this fire is that when the power is restored, it's not necessarily good power. And so we had a heck of a time trying to understand what was going on at some of our facilities because the pumps weren't operating as effectively as they should, or they're shutting off. And we're starting to consider, is this an issue with our infrastructure? And then we realized we just had poor power because in an effort to resupply, PG&E's bringing us power that might not necessarily cut the mustard for our stuff, for our municipal equipment. And so that was a lesson learned. We did review and drive through the distribution systems and look for how many folks were out and about with sprinklers on the rooftops. And we have definitely seen it through Centrix that folks were definitely working to protect their home, but it wasn't to the point where it was drawing the system down to where we were having a diminished source of supply for the fire protection effort. Here's one of those private water trucks. So by the numbers, cause was under investigation, 5,285 acres, 129 engines, 21 tenders, 5 helicopters, 36 dozers, 11 hand crews. Total personnel, 1,014, 3 million gallons of CCWD water, 100+ hours of overtime, lost 1 generator and 1 fire hydrant. Strengths, safety focus, that was a huge one. Communication, clear objectives. We knew what we needed to do. Standby generator deployment. We spent a lot of money on those generators, and by gosh, they better do what we need them to do.
Are they all portable?
Not all of them. Most of them are not, actually.
Okay.
So most of them are situated at, when you consider wastewater, the fact that folks were evacuated, we have standby generators at facilities, but our folks, Amos and his crew were great, super quick on the draw, went out and pumped all those lift stations down. So then we could just quote unquote kind of forget about them. If there's nobody flushing the toilet,
Right.
we anticipate we're going to be okay. And that was a matter of fact. That was good. We never spilled wastewater. We never ran out of water. Those are wins, I would say, for this. Where we can improve, training is always somewhere where we can improve. We're coordinating with Eric Calver's OES and their team on more ICS training. Emergency related equipment, signage, more hydrant meters, considering a fire emergency.
In areas where we have tertiary water, La Cantana, are any of our fire hydrants on tertiary water, or is that even allowed? Do we have to use treated water all the time?
Don't believe we have any in those systems on.
I just feel like.
Not tertiary water. We do have the purple hydrant in Sheep Ranch on a raw water tank, but
Right.
not tertiary treated.
Yeah, I don't think we have tertiary anywhere.
What's the laws, rules, regulations on that here in California?
Cannot touch your body, cannot touch food.
And fire
Basically
hydrant?
drip irrigation. So if it was a fire hydrant, it would be in an area that would be basically most likely cordoned off to the public or not.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you a helicopter will dip that net into
Yeah.
one of our sewer ponds if they
Yeah,
want to.
I know.
There may be some regulatory issues there, but I think supply is also pretty limited from the amount of tertiary water we generate. So, raw water availability or treated water availability is a lot more convenient. The distribution systems are already there.
One interesting thing that actually Pat and I saw when we were down in San Diego at the American Water Works presentation for meters were open tanks with check valves and floats designed for helicopters to draw from right next to a treated water tank. And so these areas on top of a hilltop, kind of cleared with an open, almost like a swimming pool that's on a float with a check valve. And they could come and draw 3,000 gallons of water, and as they leave, it's filling back up. And so those are pretty interesting. Yeah, so we're looking into those as well.
That might be something good for upcountry there.
Right, exactly. Yep. So what next? FLP development,
Fill it with a slurry line.
tabletop exercises, more ICS training, and continued coordination and engagement with our folks in the OES sphere and in the fire protection sphere. And we have our quarterly utilities coordination meetings, and now Eric has a quarterly OES and water district coordination meeting. And so we hope to develop all of these resources for emergencies, SOPs, documents, diagrams in that effort. And so I know I'm long-winded on this one, so I apologize. Just to wrap it up, I'd like to acknowledge the folks that helped the district with this fire protection effort. And we have something to commemorate the Aero fire. To the bill. So the district went ahead and made these Aero fire commemorative coins that we would like to present to those that worked the fire and to you, the board. And so I'm not sure the best way to do this. So Amos, let's just start with you. Maybe all the field guys can get up here.
Awesome.
Oh,
Come on.
oh, do it the right way. Ah.
No, I was.
Hey, everybody on staff who participated in that really was an amazing effort. It's well appreciated.
I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the partners of the room. So.
No, and thank you to our firefighters and OES. Awesome, awesome job.
That was great. That's a
Thank you all.
Thank you, Damon.
Hang on now. Francisco would never let me live this down if I didn't bring up the electrification of our fleet and what that fire would have been like at 3:30 if our staff had been out there in their electric vehicles all day and didn't have a damn charge.
That's exactly right. We wouldn't have been able to do what we did.
With the fire districts, I mean, I don't know if you guys are understand what we're up against in 2027. We have to begin to electrify our fleet, including all of our heavy trucks. The state is requiring any new purchase has to be an electric vehicle. We don't have the ability, I mean, our county does not have the ability to pay for this, first of all. But in a situation like this, I just want to acknowledge that we couldn't have gone in there and done any of that work because all of our vehicles would have been dead by that time. That's right. And it's a real issue. Right.
Well, myself and one other guy were just pulling back into the yard and ran around our office until 11:30 that day.
Yeah.
So if we were on batteries, we're not interested.
You know, I'm curious, I know Damon has worked for the last couple of years lobbying with the Air Resource Control Board about this issue, but have we ever implored the fire districts to say, hey, wait a second, these guys are our partners and we need them as first responders to be exempt? Have we made that effort?
We have not talked directly to the fire folks. We've been trying to get the representatives, the board members of the Air Resources Board to come to Calaveras County. And when we are successful, the goal was to then reach out to the fire protection folks and say, hey, we have some Air Resources Board folks that are coming. Can we all get together and kind of show them just what it is, what we do? Because part of the huge disconnect is they just don't understand the world that we live in.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I would hope that you guys would understand how important that is, you know, for the county as a whole. We won't be able to do that effort with electric vehicles. So when that time comes, I'm sure you guys will show up.
We could easily do it if we had like duplication of every vehicle we have. We could have one charged.
Right. So
and
instead of 20 million, it'll be 40 million.
yeah, one charged and one waiting. So
Anyway, thank you guys. Thank you all for helping out. Fire guys, thank you so much for showing up. Appreciate it.
is there anyone who want to make a, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I'm Eric Holt, Director for Emergency Services with the county. I've been on with the county for about 3 weeks when Aerofire happened. But I just wanted to talk about investment of time. I mean, our first working group meeting was June 17th at 9 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. we were out running. So commend your staff, Damon and Kelly were at the EOC. They were amazing. We had no concerns on water supply. So just want to commend you guys. Thank you all for everything. And I know the fire guys get a lot of pats on the back, but I wanted to give you guys one here for this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just make a statement? This was a wonderful presentation, Damon. I'm just really appreciative to see everything because, we could hear and get pictures on TV or what have you, but not in depth like this. So this is a real eye opener for me, and Abbott's Pass just really has learned a lot. And I'm sure that, with the chief here, we'll certainly have a lot of conversations with CCWD. And this is just wonderful. I really appreciate all the hard work that went into this, and hopefully you had a nice bed to get into.
Right.
Yes. So it was a great example. Aerofire was awesome to see. And I know between the Butte Fire and Aerofire, a lot of meetings, planning, OES office, and with the different fire chiefs and fire districts throughout Calaveras County and elsewhere, and even adjoining counties. I know a lot of planning meetings went in between those two fires, and obviously, showed obviously. And I look at that duty watch and I cannot believe the response. I mean, how quickly it occurs on every single fire that's occurring around here. How many helicopters and trucks and personnel are on their way and then called off. It is those statistics are amazing this year. And I just started watching or started with that app, but that is an amazing app. And one thing that I heard from Damon after this fire is the next thing we're going to be talking about is having two of these at the same time and being ready and prepared to do that. And that's very conceivable. And good planning makes good results. Awesome. Good job.
Scott brings up a good point in regards to that. I mean, do we have cooperating utilities like Amador County, Tualabi County? Do we have any relationship with them?
We absolutely do. Yes. Yep. And as a matter of fact, they had some fires in Tuolumne County last week that were
Right.
close to water and waste facilities. And we were in direct correspondence back and forth about whether or not they was going to rise to the need of ours.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Mr. Copeland.
Oakland, Copperopolis, and I'd like to personally thank all the fire representatives here for your hard work in protecting our town. I appreciate it very much. And to the CCWD workers and the leadership, and especially the guy with the dirty shirts and the dirty boots and the hands with the grease that you can't get off for the wedding you're going to in 3 months. I mean, you know, I can't say enough how proud Copperopolis is to have such a great group of men and women behind us, protecting us. And I greatly appreciate it. That being said, get your exemption for your electric vehicles so we can stop listening to you piss and moan. Okay?
I'm gonna piss and moan about that. As long as I sit in this seat, I'm gonna piss and moan about it.
Let's get your exemption then. Let's get that exemption. Good.
All right.
Good. I want to hear updates on that every meeting. Thank you.
And thank you again to staff for what you guys do every day out there. It's much, much appreciated.
Okay, before we go to the next item, I'd like to take about a 5-minute break, if you don't mind. Okay. Worth every minute.
I'm sure he realized he had to consolidate.
All right, moving on. We have a discussion presentation regarding the wildfire and forest management for Mountain County's water agencies. This is Kelly Gerkensmeyer. Hello, Kelly.
Good afternoon. So yeah, I personally think this is kind of an interesting presentation. It's a real mixture of several different topics. There will be some overlap with Damon's fantastic presentation earlier, because I did touch on the Aero fire, because I did give this to PUD's board yesterday. But I originally gave it to the Mountain Counties Water Resource Association board. That's where this kind of was developed. It was shortly after our May 15th legislative advocacy day. That was the first of its kind for Mountain Counties. I think it was fantastic. I went down there with Scott Ratterman, several other folks from CCWD and other members of Mountain Counties. On that day, our mission was to promote the statewide importance of Sierra Nevada water resources and advocate for some of the current legislation that would impact our region. Some of those main topics were the climate resiliency bond. At that time, it hadn't, passed, so we were really pushing for that, and also a few other bills like AB 2330, AB 3023, SB 945, SB 1088, which I'll talk about, and SB 1159. Those were the main bills that we went down there that day. Got two controllers here, so let's see if I can handle all this. Oh. Caught up. Yep. So when we went down there that day, I wanted to make a map kind of showing our footprint. We were really speaking to these legislators, and we wanted them to understand that what we do up here in the rural area impacts all of Calaveras County. So as you can see, our watersheds don't just affect us locally, but far beyond our boundaries. 23.1 million acres of watersheds are within that footprint of Mountain County's region. Yeah, I got too many things going on here. Two controllers is tough. So apologize for that. California's Sierra Nevada headwaters accounts for the majority of the state's overall water. 40% of the state's available water originates in the Sierra Nevada region.
When we were at that advocacy group that Kelly's talking about in Sacramento, that was the number that surprised so many legislators. We were wandering in is 40% of the state's water comes from those 12 counties that belong to Mountain Counties Water Resource Association. That shocked a lot of people.
Right. The two layers you see there, the lighter colored blue is all the surface water for all of California.
Oh, yeah.
So you can really see where our footprint is within that. Again, it's amazing, 40%. And the health of Sierra Nevada's watersheds and water resources are an incredible value and critical importance to all of California, not just up here up in the foothills. I think we all know the critical relationship between communities, watersheds, and wildfire. However, CCWD and I'm committed to continually educating and promoting the importance of these topics. Over 2 million, approximately 1 in 4 California households are located within the high and very high fire hazard severity zones that we were talking about earlier. Statewide, over 30 million acres in California fall within these vulnerable fire hazard severity zones. Let's kind of see where our footprint is with the mountain counties. So this is the moderate fire severity zone. These are the high fire severity zones. And these are the very high fire severity zones throughout our region.
What distinguishes them?
This is from the state.
But I mean, they have to have criteria, do they?
Right. I don't know the exact criteria. That probably would be a fantastic question for some of the folks that were here earlier. But part of that bill 1088 is requiring that CAL FIRE works with the state of California to identify these zones. Which brings me to the wildland urban interface. The wildland urban interface, the definition is the transition zone between unoccupied land and developed areas. It's essentially where structures and human activities intersect with undeveloped wildlands or vegetation fuels. Some of those challenges in the WUI, which you'll hear it called the WUI quite often. Fire risk management, water quality, supply reliability, and emergency response. And essentially every single one of our service areas falls within the WUI. You can see here, that's a shot of California's wildland urban interface. And I could have all of our service areas on there too, but again, they're all within this wildland urban interface, which will matter as I talk about this bill, specifically 1088 later.
So the orange is
that's what's considered the wildland urban interface. Yeah.
So just the fact that it's populated.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
people living within.
Right.
Areas where it's also.
And where this matters, for example, on 1088, the funding will be for if you're in the high or very high fire hazard severity and within the WUI. So that's where this will matter. They'll utilize these maps for this funding. So I found this fascinating. This is going to be essentially the Calaveras County wildfires over the last 146 years.
Wow.
When I see this, what I notice, not just what has burned, but what has not burned, I think is very impactful.
Bertha?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the largest ones that we experienced, I think it was actually the largest one in Calaveras history, the Butte Fire. It was a fast moving wildfire that started in 2015 and started on September 8th in Amador County. 70,868 acres. There was 2 deaths, 475 residents destroyed, 343 outbuildings, and 45 other structures. The total cost in fighting the Butte Fire was estimated at $74.7 million, which would be approximately 95 million in today's dollars to fight that fire.
And $50 million worth of weed.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd be interesting if that was in there. Yeah, maybe that's why it made it so expensive.
We could get those numbers up if we talked about the real stuff.
Yeah, I didn't see any language that talked about street value, but so the Darby Fire too, that's another one really close to our service areas, and it truly affected us. When I thought about this, many people have a story about where they were on 9/11, right? Well, mine was on the hood of a truck, all hovered around the hood of a truck, CCWD truck at the White Pines barn. I was pretty new here, and it was crazy. I really learned very, very quickly the vulnerability of our water system, and that fire put Reach 1 to the test. Thankfully, I don't think we have to worry about that pipeline anymore. As you know, we replaced it. But one of the leaks that I really remember is in Forest Meadows. We came around the corner, we got a report of a leak, and I see this fire engine about 18 inches lower than all the other trucks in the area. And what happened was one of the backcountry lines going in the Forest Meadows blew and washed out all the road base under the truck, and the whole entire fire engine just dropped. Oh, crazy. Yeah. And as we know, by September 7th of this fire, all of the 3/4 mile flume was burned, completely destroyed, and 10,000 customers for Murphy's on down into Angels Camp were cut off from water for quite a while. Very impactful fire. Donnell Fire, not necessarily in Calaveras County. That was started on August 1st, 2018 by an unintended illegal campfire near Donnell Reservoir. Among the destroyed buildings was the Dardanelle Resort and even the ancient Bennett juniper tree. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but the oldest and largest juniper tree is up there on 108. Almost threatened that. It came within a half mile. And so although this fire is not in Calaveras County, what you can see up there in the corners, it got extremely close to the Spicer Reservoir, which is our sole, our main reservoir for the entire Highway 4 corridor. And then it brings us to the Aero fire, the most recent fire, which I think we had just a fantastic presentation on that. And that was very inspiring. And again, hats off to our guys. Again, just amazing work that everybody did there. So yeah, the most recent fire, which is the Aero fire, started on June 17th, burned approximately 5,285 acres. I think I can skip through some of this. Damon really covered this really well. With this map, though, you can really see how close it came to our water system there, water and wastewater system of Copperopolis. This was a fun thing to do yesterday for the TUD board. You can see that tank that Damon was talking about earlier. It's kind of a Where's Waldo thing. But this is truly the GIS layer and the footprint of this fire. You really get a glimpse of how close it came to to town. So there was that tank that he was talking about earlier. And again, some of the same shots, which is absolutely remarkable.
And if I could jump in here real quick, Kelly, to your earlier point about communication with other agencies, it's gotten to the point with me now with watch duty. This came up yesterday at TUD, where if there's a fire that comes up that's anywhere near one of our service areas, I can pretty reliably predict a text from Don Perkins immediately saying, "What do you need?" Or from Larry. We're in the same, we try to, reciprocate the same kind of communication with those agencies if there's a fire impact in their stuff. So there's really good lines of communication between us and neighboring agencies, and we're all kind of aware of it now more than we ever were before when there's a fire that's impacting one of the other agencies, and we're, reach out proactively.
So which leads me to 1088, which we were talking about earlier. This is why stuff like this is why this bill is so important. This bill explicitly speaks to water agencies like ours.
I'm curious if we're going to do anything in our outreach to push SB 1088 to encourage our,
Right. And I have been in legal affairs. I'm trying to bring it up. I'm trying to put those packets together where it really explains what it is. I think this is another great opportunity. Every opportunity I have to talk about it, I will. This is an important one. This one's funding is dependent on the climate bond in November. So that's another, component of it.
Yeah.
So, I think.
So we have supported this bill. We've worked with mountain counties to advocate for it, and other water agencies as well. Tahoe City PUD is a big proponent of this bill. So we've kind of followed their lead in the advocacy effort. It came to the state ledge committee at Aqua last week, and we took a support position on it was a favor and amend position there, but essentially Aqua will be communicating a support position on the bill. So yeah, but as Kelly mentioned, this bill has to pass and the climate bond has to pass in order for there to be funding for this.
And Aqua isn't supporting the climate bond. It's kind of odd that they would support something that is dependent on it.
Yeah.
This is a great bill, but the no funding, zero funding comes to this without that passing. And there are actually people working against it.
Which is why Senator Alvarado Gil authored a similar bill last year that was vetoed because there was no funding mechanism. And that's what, they're depending on the bond here for, which we won't know, if 1088 passes and then the governor has to go to the governor's desk to be signed by the end of September. So we won't know the outcome of the bond at that point, but at least there'll be an answer to that question of where the funding would come from.
Can you explain why Aqua hasn't taken a position?
Well, Aqua declined to take a position. There was a pretty big debate about this. There was some frustration about the process. There were the bond package that was ultimately adopted was scaled back and it cut into a lot of different areas that were priority areas for some Aqua members.
For some big Aqua members.
Right.
A lot of the Mountain County. That's it.
A lot of the Mountain County agencies still support this bill, still support the bond because there is still drinking water funding, infrastructure funding available for it. There is still forest management, watershed health funding in the bill. And especially if 1088 also passes, it could help us, address some of our infrastructure that we need to depend on for fire suppression. Damon's presentation was fantastic and it focused on the operational effort and the next steps from an operational perspective, but also from an infrastructure perspective. Some of our next steps are, we have to address those bottlenecks because as much as the coordination between us and emergency response agencies has improved, we don't want to have to be in the position where we're telling them you can't pull from that hydrant anymore because our infrastructure can't keep up in the middle of a fire. it's unfortunate that we have to do that still. And so addressing that bottleneck is one of the things that 1088 would be perfect for, finding funding to help us address that bottleneck. So there's a lot of other infrastructure that could be improved that would help protect communities from wildfire.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, it's specific to water lines, fire hydrants, fire flows. It's specific to that. All these things that we just presented earlier. So this map is just me kind of playing around with maps and trying to communicate to the community this fire infrastructure and how crucial it is, and also be proud of it. And so this map is basically a cluster of all the fire hydrants in our service zones. And as you can see, if I play with the layers enough, it outlines each one of our service areas. I've shown you maps of our service areas before, and it kind of shows that, but all this is just a simple fire hydrant layer overlaid in our service areas. And what you see on the left there is blown up version of Rancho Calaveras.
Oh, you're not going to show Arnold?
It's in there.
Yeah, but you didn't blow it up.
Well, I got other stuff in Arnold here, so I gotta make sure I can hit all the service areas,
His priorities, right?
Yeah, so I gave them fire hydrants. I'll be giving you tanks. So, yeah, I gotta spread it.
No, I do want to say one thing on that. When I saw that slide before, and I think I've told you this already. I was when I heard that we had 30 fire hydrants that weren't working. I just thought, oh no, that's not good. We got to get all over that. But then I found out how many fire hydrants we have and what the actual number, over 2,500 fire hydrants, and that we're working diligently. And of those 30, we just heard earlier today, we're going to be replacing 10 to 12 of them.
Yeah.
So we're addressing.
He's calmed down. He's calmed down.
No, I thought 30, we got to get on this. We can't have 30. We're all over it.
So again, I told you this is a hodgepodge presentation. It's not one specific topic. It's all sorts of different stuff. So what are some of the other things that CCWD is doing other than providing a robust water infrastructure to aid in fire suppression? Well, an upcoming project that we're hoping starts in November is the Dow's fuel thinning project that we've talked about. That was basically a project with the Cal-Am forestry team, Calaveras County Water District, and the Forest Service. Almost a $400,000 grant. The goal of this project is to strengthen the Highway 4 wildfire defense system, connect existing fuel breaks that are already in place, improve accessibility for first responders, and to improve the evacuation for the residents in that area, and of course, reduce wildfire risk and improve watershed health.
Does that make up for?
No, I still got you. I got you. Don't worry. Yeah. Another project that we want to highlight, you guys have heard about the potential Blue Mountain Electric Company forest biomass plant that's planned in the West Point, Wilseyville area. I had the pleasure of touring their North Fork facility just last week, and it was really, really inspiring of what I think these facilities could do for our area. I'm convinced it's a good thing. This would be strategically located in one of the most fire-threatened regions of the Central Sierra Nevada. I just think it's a great location. I'll talk more about that here in a minute.
Where is their other Phoenix Energy? Where is the other?
They have a couple in the valley. I think one's in Modesto, Madera maybe, and then North Fork, which is
Modesto and Merced, and then Norfolk is Eastern Madera County.
Like that by Bass Lake.
Okay, right.
Yeah, very similar to this, except for I think what's really exciting about this being co-located next to our treatment plant. The cooling towers essentially could be operated with 100% reclaimed wastewater. I think that's pretty cool.
And they provide us with the sauna, I understand.
I keep hearing about the sauna, but we were told that the sauna wasn't there anymore at that facility. So
They took it out?
They had to take that one out, but I've made it clear to him that because he once mentioned it to us, that the expectation is high that it will be included in our project. So I would expect it.
So again, if you ever talk to Phoenix Energy and if you say burn, they'll get you right on it. So this plant will be gasification technology to turn forest waste into hydrogen-rich syngas. And yes, that is as impressive as it sounds. Each year, it'll process approximately 26,000 tons of logs and chips, reducing the wildfire risk. And that's also going to really decrease some of the open forest burning. That'll help with regional air quality in the area. So again, the biosolids that we have in some of these facilities can also be used in this process, and I think that's amazing. You know, that's a game changer, protecting our forests, improving air quality, and powering our community in a sustainable way. So you guys have seen this. Again, this was made for TUD, and it was made for Mountain County, so I'm sorry if some of these repeat themselves, but any chance I get to show this map, I do. You know, I'm always showing this map, and it's CCW's incredible topographic and geographical footprint in this county. Always blows my mind. And there also isn't a day that goes by that I'm not thoroughly impressed by just our list of infrastructure and how spread out it is. One thing that always gets me is copperopolis lift stations that Damon touched on earlier. When I showed this slide yesterday, there was 2 engineers from TUD that was just flabbergasted by this and couldn't even believe it. When you can say it, you can say you have 32 lift stations, or you kind of show, and I probably should do a better job here and show an Aero, you know, and watching it, how it goes all the way around the lake, all the way to our treatment plant. So maybe I can do a better job at that. I kind of understand it, but you know, think about that for a minute. It almost goes from O'Byrne's Ferry Bridge all the way around that lake to our treatment plant. That's remarkable. You know, and it's this sequence, it's this chain. You take one of that sequence, you break that sequence, and it doesn't work. So it's crucial. And again, what these guys do to keep it going in that sequence is fascinating.
The descriptive words you could use for when it doesn't work is interesting.
Yeah, there's a few there.
Fill us in.
Yeah. Another impressive component to CCW's infrastructure is the Evans Pass water system. You know, pumping water up over 2,000 feet takes an incredible amount of energy. And in this new era of frequent power outages, CCWD is certainly prepared with the arsenal of backup generators to keep the water flowing. Again, this is another, whenever I show this slide, again, at TUD yesterday, these are guys, you know, this is their utility. They understand this stuff, and they were just blown away. You know, they're blown away. We all get caught up in our own water agencies and think it's, you know, significant, which it is. But when you see somebody else's, it really, again, the 2 engineers that were there just wanted to know more. And so it's pretty cool. But this one, you know, this is incredible, moving the water up that hill. So this little section here is kind of, I presented this at the engineering committee, and this was something that Director Davidson asked with some of the past engineering projects. You know, I know that during the recent rate study, we heard a lot about kicking the can down the road. And I really disagree with that. After doing that presentation for you about the last 10 years, I kind of expanded that and went back even further. You know, and I've been here for 23 years, and the amount of projects we've done in that time has been huge. Just absolutely astonishing. And then again, as I was doing that project, I looked into the 90s and realized that, you know, a lot of these tanks were built in the 90s, a lot of these treatment plants were built in the 90s, and then even some of the lines that I didn't have to fix anymore, they were fixed by what I call the old timers, excuse me, but they would tell me these stories of the old cross-country line that went up to Big Trees that was on the other side of the canyon. Now we have on this side of the canyon, they just said it was miserable. You know, 2-wheel drive backhoes, snowstorms, and that thing was blowing up all the time. Well, that was fixed. You know, not in my time, but we were.
Think about four-wheel drive backhoes are pretty modern, you know. They only
Yeah.
really started making them maybe, you know, 30 years ago.
Yeah, when I first started at the barn, we had just a 2-wheel drive backhoe. That got dicey. So again, this was created for the engineering committee to simply see what we've been doing towards our CIP objective in the past decade. You know, and again, we chose 2013 because at that time the board adopted the CIP component for the new rates at that time, allocating funds specific to the CIP projects. And I have to, you know, researching that information and looking back at that, and really hats off to the staff and the board at that time for making that bold decision to move forward. So again, Director Davison, you've seen this. This is the same one I presented at
Could you
the,
go back to the last one just for a second? I
yeah.
finally figured out how to read it. Okay, go ahead. Thanks.
So that's not stacked. The blue is the construction costs overlaid over the operating budget. And so you can definitely see an uptick in those years of working towards, and this isn't just specific to CIP, it's all construction projects. And this is another way of looking at it as a percentage. And again, only going to 2013. If you look prior to that, there was still a lot of work going on. There was that lull with the whole, 2008, 2009 timeframe, but yeah, during that time, over $61 million and averaging out for that time frame, 32% of our operating budget. Some of those projects, as we've talked about before, Techite. When I brought up Techite yesterday at the TUD, everybody was almost furious. They said they hate that word. And it was weirdly comforting to know that there was other folks out there that hated that material as much as I did. They're really aggressively working on fixing it. They think they only have 500 feet left in their system, but the engineer specifically said, we think, because they keep finding some more of it. They have 8-inch Techite, and they've had a heck of a time replacing it, and it's been nothing but heartache for them too. So it was interesting. I hadn't really spoke to anybody else yet about that.
When I first got on the board in closed session, the year before I got on the board, I think we spent like $4 million in attorney's fees, but one of them, we were spending $1,000 a day to sue Techite, who was a bankrupt company.
Yeah.
It's just like, what the hell are we doing? But yeah, I was thankful to get that off our buck.
Yeah, it was funny because I didn't realize that they had Techite. So when I said it, and then the outcry from engineers to all the board members pretty much saying, we don't say that word here. It was a funny moment for me.
They must have done the rounds back in the day.
Yeah.
And salesman.
Yeah. And again, they got about 500 feet left, and they're trying to get out of the ground too. The engineer knew quite a bit about it. He said, actually, when the product was originally manufactured, it was pretty strong. But doing the testing, they found out that it severely degraded after a certain time and just totally turned to junk. But supposedly when it was created, it was good stuff. I don't know. Another project that I talked about was the 125,000 gallon fire suppression water tank that was installed in Sheep Ranch. Another great project. You guys are aware of it, but it's a great time to remind us all about it. I did tell the story of, ironically, during the ribbon cutting for that, a fire started right down the road, and they did fill up a water tender off that truck. Was not planned. There was no theatrics there, but it's definitely ironic. I'm not sure if it's been utilized since, but it's another great piece of infrastructure that's been built, not only for fire suppression, but for when we do go to rehab that tank, we have some options now.
Wasn't that tank moved from another location within the district?
Recycle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. A great project. Most of the redwood tanks in the Evans Pass area have been replaced. We just did one, and we're working on one in Copper right now as well. But in the Evans Pass area, we replaced 8 redwood tanks with those 7 glass line steel tanks. I think we all understand and can really identify and see what importance that has for fire protection. Not only do we upsize some of these tanks, but they're much more resilient than the redwood, as beautiful as it is. So I think that's a great project. We have just one left in the whole system, as far as I know.
Where?
Timber Trails.
Where?
Timber Trail.
Timber Trail off Sheep Ranch Road.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it feeds it feeds a few customers on Sheep Ranch Road, and then it's not a trailer park. What would I call it?
Yeah, it's like just a trailer park.
Homeless camp?
No, it's like a vacation trailer park style. It's not like a full-time residence trailer park.
RV site?
Yeah, like a camping.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of full-time people there.
I don't think you're supposed to live there full-time, unless it's changed. So again, you guys have seen this. I don't think we need to go through it, but this is just, unless you want to, this is the time lapse of changing out that tank. Now jumping into Copper Cove, that's a current project in Copperopolis, replacing 4 of those lift stations that I talked about earlier. The West Point Wilseyville consolidation project, this will be nice because this will make me have to change all of our maps because now we'll go down to 12 wastewater facilities instead of 13. So another great project. Jason, the inspector, the other day called me when they were spraying the gunite on those, and that was impressive. Watching those guys, there was like 5 guys having to just move that big old heavy hose full of concrete. With some of these projects too, I'm trying to be more active with pushing it out on social media, and it's getting a really, really good response. Seeing some of these projects, especially in a place like West Point, that not everyone maybe knows we're up there or and knows about this project. I mean, you can't just see this project from the road. You don't really know it's even there, but it's, you know, it's a significant project. We'll just watch them spray some concrete real quick and I'll move to the next one.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. They got both those basins are completely finished with concrete. It's all that part of it's done.
Can you imagine that job?
Yeah. Yeah, I can.
So now I'm just going to go through the watersheds real quick. This next slide is not something that I chose to put in here. I think Barbara Balin emailed me the night before this presentation and wanted to hear about White Pines and the recreational component. So last minute, I threw this in there. This wasn't part of the original Mountain Counties, but
You did after that email.
I did. You were on that email, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I threw it in there and she wanted to talk about the recreational component. And one thing I thought was really cool about our recreation.
You're working too late.
You can't say no to Barbara. I mean, I
Yeah,
know
but
that.
I mean, where else can you take a paddle, stroll on a beautiful lake and watch some good construction going on? So, I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, we have like a full-fledged recreational activities. And again, here we are at the upper Stanislaus River watershed, which is the watershed for most of the Highway 4 corridor, essentially all the Highway 4 corridor. I'm sure you guys know it as HUC number 180400010, but I call it the upper Stanislaus watershed. But we rely on that smaller sliver. You know, it's basically 5 sub watersheds of the larger upper Stanislaus. Starting at beautiful Mosquito Lake and Highland Lakes, that's the tippy top of this watershed. You guys know about Highland Lake, right? Being the very top, you know, the 2 lakes, one's the top of the McCallany, one's the top of the Stan. I tell people that all the time. They don't know that, or they're just amazed by that. I just think it's awesome.
I spent the night on the mountain. I started hiking from Highland Lake. I thought I could make it down to Alpine. It didn't work out.
No?
No.
I'll tell you about a camping trip that I
It was
helped a
not
lot.
a camping trip.
I had a lot. I had a lost hunter that we had to save. He was hypothermic. He came knocking on our campsite at about 3 in the morning. Yeah, I'll tell you about it. So yeah, the upper watersheds are the heart of the North Fork Stanislaus River hydroelectric project, which spans 35 miles, encompasses 13 miles of tunnels, 4 dams, 2 powerhouses, and is responsible for supplying water not only to the Ebbs Pass water service area, but the communities of Murphy's, Angels Camp, and Copperopolis. Just another quick shot of all the North Fork project in its glory. And again, this amazing project was first conceptualized by CCWD in the 1950s. Construction was between 1985 and 1989. It was completed on time and within budget. And there it is once again. I probably showed too many pictures of it, but I'm going to keep doing that because this project is crucial to not only the community, you know, to CCWD, but to the county in general. So
Absolutely.
that concludes my presentation.
Great.
Great job, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Questions?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, beautiful, Kelly. Good work.
Awesome. Nice presentation,
Yeah.
Kelly.
Yeah, it was very well received by TUD yesterday. They were really impressed with the presentation as well. There are a lot, it inspired a lot of questions. Kelly's, it was an hour-long presentation because of all the discussion that came out of it. So yeah, Kelly knocked it out of the park as usual.
What's the length of service of their engineers? Because they had gone through.
We tried to kidnap one of them yesterday, didn't work, but actually, good question. The district engineer's been there for a little while, and then I didn't recognize the other one that was there, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, see,
Okay, any other questions for Kelly? Francisco, go ahead.
Francisco de la Cruz, Valley Springs. We've been personally affected by the CAL FIRE Fire Hazard Severity Zone remapping effort. And I attended the CAL FIRE meetings where the public was invited to comment on them. And I haven't seen anything since a year and a half ago done by the Office of Emergency Services, despite multiple calls to them, or the county supervisors to reinforce the FireWise community or some of these things that help people get discounts on insurance. That's why I got involved with Calco in trying to help them get their ISO score improved. And Mr. Hamry done a great job of keeping us informed on all that. But I don't see us coalescing and getting ourselves together to help ourselves. You know, we've got this other effort of electrification that can also bring us together to fight a common enemy, if you will. But this thing with insurance, it's if you're a subscriber to Nextdoor and some of the threads, it's driving a lot of people literally out of state, if you're to believe their posts. And you know, we just kind of, oh God, it's terrible. And is there anything that the CCWD board can do with the county to encourage them to get their act a little bit more? I know they just have a new OES director. I have dealt with both of them and they got their hands busy, but we don't see anything out in the community to say there's help coming, you know. We even formed a little group to help people that can't do their defensible space clearing, and we volunteered to go out there and help them do it for them because they're unable, they're disabled, or they're too old. But there isn't anything in the county to help folks get FireWise ready. And I don't know how familiar you are with the FireWise requirements if you're going to be FireWise certified. It goes against a lot of the landscaping practices that are very common in this area. So it's kind of like you're going to try to push a rope. I don't know how you can help, but we're going to run into some other walls when we start getting told by the state how much water we can use. And we got to reduce this, we got to reduce that. And if we don't, we're going to get fined. Now, those fines are going to come from somewhere. And I imagine it's a ratepayer that's going to fund some of that. But it's starting to come together into a very perfect storm of driving a lot of people straight out of their houses, unfortunately. And I look to you guys to take some leadership and try to convince the county, hey, you got to do something. I mean, you know, we can't afford to be priced out of our homes with property taxes are going up, all the local services are going up, water rates are going up, and pretty soon, well, PG&E's already gone up. And somebody on a $1,500 a month or $1,600 a month Social Security check ain't gonna last here. Thank you.
Well, I actually think we are making an effort to bring the fire departments together, and that's certainly a request. I don't know that, you know, we got to be careful of the mission. I think that is a county mission. It should be, and I have the ear of several supervisors, and I've been talking with them and the fire department on other issues, and I'll definitely continue to bring that up. You know, it's a valuable tool. Really, you just need to know what the application process is. The way I've always found out the best way to do any of this stuff is to do all the work, hand it to them, let them take the credit, and then just walk away and feel good about yourself. That's how it needs to be done. But I'll continue to push the supervisors in my area to go down that road. It's important.
Bill, those FireWise requirements, Francisco, are absolutely ridiculous. Also your vents to your attic and your basement, if it's large enough for a golf tee to go into it, the holes are too big. So replacing all of those all around your house and the 8-foot perimeter around your house. Traditionally, houses are built with flower beds. And there's bushes, flower beds, bark, whatever you put in them. That's, you got to take everything out of those. And so that way houses are constructed or have been constructed, I think it'll work more going forward with new construction. And I don't know if, haven't figured out if planning departments are requiring this at this point.
No.
But that's another, I mean, the county's got to get on board with what is going on with what's being required to keep insurance. And every policy, every carrier that I know is going to that Firewise requirement, Firewise accreditation.
I've replaced 73 of those. Okay, some went 23 feet high. My flower beds used to be what used to be used, they called it bark nuggets. Those bark nuggets.
Right, burn
2-inch. It's all red lava rock. It used to be green leaf landscaping that lost their leaves, it's all cacti. So if it catches fire, I got bigger problems. Okay.
True. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Rogers again from Valley Springs, just kind of tagging on to what Francisco was highlighting in this. I got a slide from Kelly's presentation. Thank you very much. It was on his SB 1088. It was quite educational, but one slide really stood out to me about the scoring methodology to prioritize distribution of state matching funds. So one of those prerequisites is Firewise, California Fire Safe Council Action Plan, National Fire Protection Association, Firewise, USA Community, as he was just talking about. That's one of the conditions in this scoring that would be used to allocate the funds. The other is a community water system master plan, hydraulic modeling or professional engineering report showing the need for and impact of proposed improvements. So as an action item, is that something that's been completed by our district? Does that exist?
Could you repeat the name of that again?
I'll read it again.
Yeah.
Like a community water system master plan, hydraulic modeling or professional engineering report showing the need for and impact of proposed improvements.
Gotcha. Yes, we do those. I want to say for the Valley Springs area is 2018, most recent master plan. We have master planning documents that usually come with models for the water systems, but we're in the process of updating. We have a few of them budgeted this year to update. So that's kind of an ongoing process, is
that's
trying to update those master.
Good to hear, because it appears to be a precondition for this funding along with the other Firewise. And so that, again, tagging on what he was talking about, which is one precondition, and we don't know if this is going to pass in November or not, but clearly developing that master plan and continue to focus on that will be one of those preconditions. I just wanted to be aware whether that exists or we're working on it, because we've got to obviously be prepared to meet the criteria of the scoring system so we can get the funds. I mean,
it does exist. Is it one of the ones we're updating this year or not?
Yeah, doing that is fast.
Yeah.
We'll do the model and.
But not Jenny Lind.
We don't have Jenny Lind on the budget this year.
Not this year, but yeah, we'll update those periodically.
Yeah, he's right. And some of the other requirements are just basically identifying them. And if you read the bill too, it talks about the local hazard mitigation plan. So we've already identified some of these projects. And for example, we have in that plan, such as the tank at Timber Trails there, we've already identified it. And so that's part of the process they're talking about, either through a master plan or some kind of, showing a need for it. They're not just going to give us fire hydrants if we don't need them in that particular area. They're trying to just find out where the areas that are vulnerable.
And we have the documentation to prove that we want what
we have a lot that's already been identified that I think will be right off the bat useful. And again, anytime we do a master plan and we can identify those areas, it's crucial.
Yeah, I just, wanted to make sure that we had the wheels in motion to meet these preconditions so that if and when the bill passes, that we're kind of locked and loaded and perhaps, you know, higher on the priority list than maybe other communities. So as long as we're moving in that direction, I think that's helpful. And we, as community members, you know, it's up to us to also do our part on the Firewise side and try to motivate people to make these investments and changes. I don't know which of these programs that we can be successful with, but you know, the community has their share of the responsibility as well.
Have you guys gone to like the Lackatina Homeowners Association and explained what the Firewise would mean to their landscape plans and got their approval?
I have not personally.
It might be, you know, I mean, you'll be,
I
doubt you'll be surprised, but there will be people that won't want to do it.
Yeah, I don't doubt that for a minute, Jeff, that's a possibility, but so yeah, we have to start somewhere. And so anyway, this slide jumped out to me as being really critical to being successful in getting the matching funds. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate and understand what steps the district has taken to try to meet these prerequisites. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there's Pat Roy, PR. You want to talk to us, Pat? Go ahead.
Are you on mute?
Try again, Pat.
Technical difficulties.
Okay, Pat, we're going to give you another half a second here. We need to move on.
And Pat, if you can't get audio or your microphone working, you can always submit send us an email or we can follow up after if you have a question.
Or just hit the chat button and type something in right there and we'll read it.
Okay. Next item. How
Thank you,
about,
Kelly?
thank you very much, Kelly.
Awesome, Kelly.
Okay,
We are creeping right on.
discussion action regarding awarding of engineering and design contract for Ebbets Pass Sawmill tank replacement.
So we were recruiting engineers at TUD. They weren't trying to recruit you while you were on their premises.
The main reason I was there was to make sure none of our staff got recruited, and then we tried to throw an engineer in the trunk on the way home. It didn't.
All right.
Yeah, we're definitely short-staffed.
Hello, Kevin.
Good afternoon. So it's here to talk about the Ebbets Pass Sawmill tank replacement. So the existing tank's a 3 million gallon weld seal tank. It serves approximately 23, and it was built in 1977. It serves approximately 2,300 of our customers on the Ebbets Pass corridor, including Arnold, Dorrington, and Big Trees. So the existing tank is problematic for multiple reasons. The tank conditions poor. It's never been recoated, so the coatings are good for about 20 years, and it's going on 50 years. And the capacity exceeds the normal demand for the area. So this results in regular water quality issues with chlorinated organics because of the size of the tank and the dimensions. So, and also with the one larger tank, it doesn't allow us to take the tank out of service and drain it to complete repairs on it. So the proposed project is to construct 2 tanks at that location to replace the one larger tank. These tanks will be sized correctly for what we need. To be basically like 2 500,000 gallon tanks. The tanks would be glass lined similar to the bolted tanks that we just completed up on the pass with aluminum dome. These tanks don't need recoating for the life of the tank. And up in the high fire zone areas, we don't have to do welding, and they're easier to, you don't need cranes to erect them and stuff. So the challenging terrain kind of leads us to the bolted tanks. And also with the two tanks, we can operate them together combined, or we can operate one tank at a time. And the new tanks will have mixing systems inside of them to keep the water fresh, and so won't have these dead spots in the tanks where the water just sits. So
Can you describe how that water is agitated, or how's it move around?
So there's multiple different options on the tanks. So the tanks, like we put the mixing systems we put in Heather, had nozzles and check valves, so they spray out different directions within the tanks, and then so it's a feed fill with the pump station also pumps up the hill to Dorrington. So this so with the feed fill, the water spray, then they go up the nozzles, and then there's check valves that allow it to come back from a different location. That way you maximize the flow. There's modeling software that the vendor that supplies these nozzle systems, depending on the flow and your tank type and that type of stuff, they can predict the age of the water within the tank.
And this is going on inside the tank?
Yeah, so this goes in the tank. So there's the feed line comes in the side of the tank, and there's nozzles that spray up. And they're sized for the flow. So like the metal pump station pumps up their 2,000 gallons a minute. You give them that flow rates, and they have a computer software that models the tank to maximize. They decide the angle with these nozzles and size of the nozzles and that type of stuff to get you the maximum circulation within the tank.
I saw where this tank is located. What is its purpose?
So this tank is the main tank for all of Arnold. So like my house, I live up by Pine Brook. The water goes all the way over there from this tank. And then also this tank, there's a pump station in that tank, and it pumps up to Dorrington from there. So this is the tank that most people in all of Arnold rely on.
Move for acceptance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have public comment on this item. Okay, poll the board, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, thank you for that, Kevin. Next, we have 4C, discussion and action regarding applications and financial requests with the USDA Rural Development for Arnold Wastewater Treatment Facility improvements.
I'll leave this one to you, Jeff.
Move for acceptance.
There we go.
Oh. Second.
There we.
No discussion?
I think it's self-explanatory.
This one could have
You guys
been-
been here for long enough today.
This one could have been in the consent agenda. I'm
Okay.
thinking.
All right, we need to entertain public input
Is
on
there
this, though.
anything else?
All right, was that official? We have a motion and a second? Okay, poll the board, please.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes,
Director Davidson.
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes.
thank you.
Nice
Nope.
job, Jeff.
That was tough,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Great
Good
presentation.
job.
See if Damon can outdo that report.
All right. 5A, report on the July 2024 Operations Department. This is another hour presentation here.
I will be brief.
Okay.
Mostly questions by exception, although I can tell you that some of the highlights of this operations report do provide a breakdown of the parameters that the operations department considers within mobile MMS. So it's a window into that system. Yeah. Here we go. So we have our usual spate of operational items that have happened over the month of July. I'd like to acknowledge that 36 service lines were repaired in the Jenny Lynn system. And that 11 in Copper, 9 on the pass, and 4 in West Point. All the while, our utility crew replaces service lines on Baldwin. So that's just a never-ending component. So when we talk about fire hydrant testing, we also have folks fix some service leaks throughout the month. So in this presentation, we jump into our operational dashboard. So this is a snapshot from the last day of the month. So this is a dynamic dashboard. This changes all the time. And so you can look, we can see here are items associated with active service requests, open work orders, service requests by category, work orders by crew, work orders by category. We can look at historic information. We can look at underground service alerts, and we can talk about the heat map. And so really this heat map is focused on service requests for the different systems. So you'll see snaps of this, and within our operational dashboard, we can actually click on these images and bring up a broader image. And so I try to illustrate that a little bit in the presentation. As we move through, you see some of the parameters will stay the same, but others will change. So you got leak checks by month, the light blue on the bottom right, that is work orders by type. And so what you can't really see, and I apologize, is it's not, well, I might have actually a bigger slide of that. See, so all the while we're scrolling through the heat map at the top, which we can dive in and refine and look at. And so this is USA's in the upper right by service area. We have a considerable amount of USA tickets. We talk about PG&E and all the utility work. All the pole work is just driving our crews batty by the amount of work that is created by their efforts. And so here's kind of a dive into crew name, and this is work order. Here. Yeah, completed work orders. And so this is by crew, and then this is by type. And so I want to highlight the fact that preventative maintenance is the largest group of work orders. So while the district does acknowledge that there's a ton of operational improvements that need to take place, kind of in consideration to the slide that Kelly presented about operations costs over capital improvement, and also considering material costs have increased significantly over the years, I want to highlight the fact that preventative maintenance is still the top when it comes to all the work efforts that are complete. And then by category. And so the considerably high one, obviously, is check for leaks for our system. And here's a little bit of more of a drill into heat map, and you can drill right on into the yellow, which is obviously the highest or the most frequently visited sites. And so just really, that's what I can look at. That's what our folks can look at any time of the day, anytime they please, to understand the dynamic conditions of operations. And so right back to Rancho Calaveras on West Hill and looking at corporation stop failure with a full circle clamp with a tap saddle essentially, and a replacement. And so diving right into the work, it never ends, it always moves forward, and we're there to address it. This is a great picture on the image on the left is, I think it's like a 2 a.m. shot of, crew members out there working to make a repair on a high pressure service line, shoring box in action. So safety is always at top of mind. Replacing service laterals by utilizing shoring box. So if there is a cave in, that staff member is safe. That shoring box will keep safe, protect them. This is an interesting one, an air relief valve on a water line that has a leak. This is in literally the middle of nowhere from that Sawmill tank, the conversation that you just had, to Big Trees State Park. This air relief valve will allow any air to escape along that water main that serves the state park, and there was a leak there. So we have to coordinate with the property owner, who happens to be SPI. This is part of a timber harvest plan, so they need to understand what it is that we're going to do out there in order to make the repair. So some coordination involved, And that's really where we're at. You can see the image on the right with the repair and then the backfilled meter box covering the air relief valve. It just shows you're literally out in the middle of nowhere. And so O&M on the pass, pressure reducing valve stations fill up with water. And if you can't evacuate the water from the drain, we have to physically remove it with the trash pump in order to inspect the pressure reducing valves. And we have hundreds of these on its pass. And you can see the image on the right is a representative from the clay valve or clay valve, which is a manufacturer control valve. We have a lot of those valves out in our system, really doing an assessment of the condition of the valve in that box. And you can see the one on the left is it's not pretty. More of that work. And then water quality flushing. So we talk about iron and manganese down in the low country, and we also have water quality issues on the pass, mainly due to organics contacting chlorine. And so our folks flush unidirectionally and really by any means necessary. So you can see the image on the right, that's actually an air relief valve box. And if we have identified that area as being an area of low water use, we're going to find a way to purge and flush that water in order to improve the water quality. So that's what's happening there. This is FEMA dollars at work. So during the last spate of atmospheric river storms, we lost this road that we maintained to our Indian Rock wastewater treatment facility. And FEMA paid our construction crew to put it back together, and they did a fabulous job. You can see the riprap and relayed the culvert pipe and regraded the road and put new material on top. So the objective is that this mitigates any future issues associated with atmospheric river storms in this thing. Great job. Hats off to the construction crew. Really clean work. More construction crew work, cleaning access. And then here's conversation about raising valve boxes. So oftentimes valve boxes are covered up with asphalt, dirt, they disappear, and we lose them over the years if we're not understanding where they're at. And so when we find lost valves, we always want to reestablish them and reset them to grade, and that's what they're doing there. Here's our mechanics, two of which were in the buildings earlier during the Aero fire debrief. They replaced this valve, and this is one of those control valves called the clay valve. You can see the image on the left, it's the gray color, reflects the piping, and the image on the right is the brand new valve in dark blue. So this was a capitalized expenditure last year. So we ordered these. These are ozone units. So ozone is a super powerful oxidant used to help pull manganese out of solution. We have two 30-foot tall stainless steel towers, both at Copperopolis and at Jenny Lind, which convey ozone gas in the raw water stream to try to kill any bacteria or virus that might be present in the water, and also to sequester manganese and bring it out of solution. So the ozone bubbles flow through pumice stones, and the ozone is generated in these units. You can see how big the old units were by if you look at the pad for the new unit. And they're much smaller. The technology's much improved. And so there are literally, there's electricity in a light bulb essentially inside of that unit that's being blended with nitrogen gas from an air compressor to make ozone gas. And then it's conveyed, it's super aggressive. So it's conveyed in stainless steel piping out into the system, and all through the treatment facilities are ozone gas monitors. So if they go off, our folks have to evacuate. We have vent fans all throughout the system. And so, yeah, it's really aggressive, right? And so one of the key components there is the uninterruptible power source. And so along with that purchase was a new uninterruptible power source. And this is our folks going through a training session. So John Applegate, the operator, the senior operator there in Copperell on the left, was here this morning or earlier this afternoon, and as was Craig Camp, our electrician there in the image. And so they're receiving a training from Toshiba on how to operate this UPS. There's a huge bank of batteries within that UPS. Here's a glimpse that you don't see every day is our electricians doing remote SCADA work to add a time delay to telemetry alarms, so they can do all this work remotely from their laptops. And that's kind of a glimpse into comms trends in the image on the left. And then more electrical work, Viper comms radio at lift station 7. So this is tied to the previous slide. I'm working to reestablish communication. So we had transformer issues at our B tank site, which destroyed our communications. So we had folks out late with PG&E. The monumental task in that regard was to convince PG&E that it was a PG&E issue. And so once that happened, it was really kind of a quick work effort to put a workaround in place to keep our infrastructure operating while PG&E worked to resolve that issue. So we are definitely working on a claim with PG&E, but it's not material, it's time. And that's somewhat tedious and tough process. Electrical, this lift station had a pump failure. The shaft was literally frozen, so that requires a pump replacement. And then our mechanics do what they can do to try to reestablish operations in the future. And there we are. Hopefully that was a freight train operations report.
Okay, I have just a couple of questions on the other operations report. This one.
On the
Okay.
written document, okay?
Uh-huh. You have a notation that we're going to be doing a lead service line inventory. And where are we on that?
So we completed, so if everybody is not aware, all water utilities are required to complete an inventory of customer-owned service lines by October 16th of 2024 and report that inventory to the state. And that is an EPA federal requirement. And so there are multiple methods that are approved by the feds and the state to assess lead service lines within your service area. One of those is called a statistical method. So we basically take a small percentage of our services and we analyze them. We physically take a look at the connection to the meter and the connection to the home. And based on that assessment, it could expand the search or it completes the inventory. Meaning, if we find lead, then we're going to have to expand the inventory and look at a more broad scope of service lines. But if we don't find lead, the inventory is complete. And so we start the physical work next week.
Oh, okay.
The customer service folks, Kelly Richards and her team are great. They issued a notification today to the 1,056 randomly selected accounts. So this state approved plan takes a percentage.
Okay.
So we got our crew is going to take a look at 1,000 locations, and then Pat and myself will enter that information into mobile MMS, and it will actually change kind of the way that service line is characterized in the software from then on. And so we anticipate having that work done by the 1st of October.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's a quick thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Your purchasing agent worked on recall orders for leased vehicles?
Yeah, so just like any vehicle we were to purchase, all the enterprise vehicles have recalls on them. And so we need to coordinate getting those vehicles over to the dealership for recall.
How many are we talking about?
Ooh, there's been a few. So these Fords have had seatbelt recalls, they've had emissions recalls, and generally it's just schedule a time for usually one of the dealerships, somewhat local, and our guys would take the truck down and have the recall work done. And it's pretty innocuous, but it can be troublesome to schedule. So a couple times our purchasing agents actually schedule the mechanic to show up here, and all of our folks that have a recall come in and get the work done and move on.
Okay. And so I'm sorry with the cow problem down in Vallecito.
Yeah, that's an ongoing issue that we've tried many creative ways to resolve. We always have cows in our spray field, cows in our wastewater pump. We're always fixing the fence and in turn fixing the spray field and calling the rancher. So it's a very sore spot for some.
Oh.
And it's a continual work effort. So it needs to be addressed.
Okay, ongoing potholing and locating to verify infrastructure. We have no records showing
Yeah. So,
multiple hydrants.
So a lot of our distribution crew members are focused right now, particularly on the pass, on understanding where infrastructure is that we think it might be, but we're not completely sure because we can't locate it because it's made of AC pipe. or the service lines are poly or plastic or PVC. And so, folks pothole. So our crews actually bore a hole in the ground to confirm, oh, yep, there's the water main, I found it. And then they notate that on a map and then they
Yeah.
can send that in.
Finally, we will
Right.
bring our records up to date.
Exactly.
Okay, great about the air conditioner at White Pines Park. A free unit somebody was giving away.
That's great. Yeah.
Terrific. And my last question is, okay, I'm looking at your chart about the water production and there was quite a difference between 23 and 24. This one?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, demand is going to fluctuate and obviously the conditions of Mother Nature and the weather is going to really has a lot to do with water.
Okay, because we used so much because, the hot period that we, the
Right.
last, how many months?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, okay. That's it. Okay, fellas, your turn.
Thank you guys.
My turn's over.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you, Damon.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Okay, general manager's report.
Excuse me. Yeah, unless you want to take the question.
Oh. Well, if you insist, yeah, come on up.
Yes.
Come on.
Again, Mike Rogers from Valley Springs. Thanks, Damon, once again. So, and I've raised this topic before, but when you look at the one chart, you basically have planned work and you have unplanned work. And that relationship between planned work, I'm talking about the bar graph, Damon. I think it's maybe slide 10 or 12 that was up. And so, while the planned work or planned maintenance work is the highest data point in your data set, when you aggregate all the unplanned work, it far exceeds the amount of planned work. And the reason I bring it up is that typically unplanned work is one of the key drivers in your overtime expense. So monitoring that and on a heat map is more relevant to me than the types of unplanned or unplanned work that you have in the graph, which is useful certainly from your perspective, but from our perspective, when we see that relationship between planned work and unplanned work over time, we would expect that if unplanned work goes down, then it should be reflected in lower overtime expense from an operation, right? Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's fair. But you also got to bear in mind, all the disciplines are so different. So if the unplanned work is aggregated, you're going to aggregate electrical work associated with a sewer lift station and distribution system work. And so it's almost like you got to separate the two to better understand.
Sure, but
They're
capital improvement in the electrical system, like ozone machine,
Yeah,
for
right.
example, you would probably not characterize that as planned work, but it's probably work that's performed during regular business hours, right? When I think of unplanned work, I
Right.
think of failures out in the field
Yeah.
that are gonna, require a crew at 10:30 at night or something, which is gonna drive overtime. So when we see that relationship between planned work and unplanned work, and if it's trending one way or the other, then I would expect you're doing some sort of root cause analysis to
Absolutely.
compare it back and determine it. So,
Yeah. And when it comes to service lines, I think we all acknowledge we're still in the noise phase. We've got so much work to do that we're not to a point yet where we can refine and understand, the data to the point that we know we're getting over the hill.
yeah.
And we can talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about, but again, back to, your unplanned, the other thing that happens with your unplanned work is it takes time and resources away from your planning. You've got to dispatch the crew, so you got to pull them off their regular maintenance. And so, it's all about operational efficiency. And so
keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate the information and the data, but as a board, I would encourage you to monitor that very closely because there is a direct relationship between unplanned work and overtime expense, right?
Okay, any other public comment? Pat, are you with us now?
I hope so. Is it working now?
Yeah, great.
It is or is not working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. This particular request to speak was just for a microphone test. The other business has already been completed. I don't want to bring up old stuff, but it lets me know I'm ready for the next time. So thank you very much.
And Pat, we see the questions you posted in there. We can get back to you offline on those.
That'll work great. Thank you again.
All right, does that conclude all the public comment? Board comments? General manager? You have a
All right,
report?
I'm gonna try to burn through these quickly. Productive meeting with county staff this week on groundwater sustainability agency. I know we're all frustrated and the lack of progress on that front. So I'm optimistic that we've made some progress and we'll be reporting back to the board on that in the next, hopefully the next month or so. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers meetings, flurry. I mean, we're always meeting with them on a regular basis. Mia's done a great job of delivering on a previous discussion item that we had with headquarters staff in the DC visit recently, where we had what they call kind of an integrated vertical team meeting between headquarters management staff and all the way down to the SAC district and us. Really productive meeting. I think it hopefully will really help move things along and establish that line of communication directly with more senior staff. So when we do continue to run into bureaucratic roadblocks, we can hopefully plow through them quicker than we have been able to in the past. So we're working diligently on that front. And Mia continues to be really helpful. And we have a new project manager, a little bit more turnover. So that's one of the things that has caused delay in the past. But we've been assured it won't cause delay this time. We're working with them to make sure that happens. This is, sorry if I'm going too fast. That's for the Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant funding from the Army Corps. Met again with the Highway 4 water agencies on a regional water supply planning effort. We're working on draft memorandum of understanding and scope of work for that work effort. We hope to be bringing those back to the agency boards hopefully in September, along with some board involvement, direct board involvement. So we've been trying to coordinate a meeting of 2 by 2 by 2 in this case. So City of Angels, our directors and UPUD directors all getting together from time to time to receive more detailed updates on that work effort and make sure that we're staying in line with the resolutions that were adopted and that we have board buy-in along the way. So looking forward to that, hopefully early September. Before we do that, Kelly and I went to, several of the board members were also at the NCPA Commission dinner on after our last board meeting. The next morning was the NCPA Commission meeting where Kelly and I gave a presentation. Mostly Kelly did a fantastic job on his presentation and presented to the full commission on history of CCWD, history of the Norfolk project. And I think it was a really well-received presentation, but I hope it also achieved our objectives of educating the commissioners on what our, how the project came about and CCWD's role in the development of that project and just how important it is to Calaveras County. We're going to take a modified version of that presentation to UPUD and the City of Angels Camp Council. And they requested and I think it's a good idea for us to share that with them as well. And I think because of that, we will bring it to the full board here at the same, around that same time. So later this month or in September, we'll bring it to the full board here and then also be sharing it with UPUD and Angels Camp. I think it's a really kind of critical foundational understanding of CCWD and of the Norfolk project that all of these agencies, I think, need to make sure we keep in mind as we negotiate, whether it's water supply agreements or as we go through relicensing of all of the projects, the Utica projects and our project. So I think it's really a important building block for us to establish with those agencies. Separately from that, we're meeting with UPUD on just some direct infrastructure questions related to the slurry line and ag water delivery, as well as backup water supply, and potential interconnection, and seeking grant funding for an interconnection between the distribution systems. The last week we had was it last week? So legal affairs meeting. Kelly's done a great job in really kind of improving the documentation provided to that committee, and we've been making an effort to bring in me as a regular reporter at those meetings now, and bringing in other reporters on those meetings. So very productive discussions. We had the week before that External Relations Committee meeting, and just to update to make sure the whole board is aware, we've kind of reformatted the External Relations Committee so that Kelly Richards and Kelly Gerkensmeyer will now be giving their reports to the full board, not just at the external relations committees. We think their reports are really important and important for the whole board to hear. So that'll start at the second meeting in August, and they'll be alternating the second meeting in each month, providing their report outs to the full board. Let's see, where did I leave off here? Kelly mentioned already the tour we took. I went with them down to Norfolk to tour the biomass plant down there. It's very similar to the one that is proposed for construction here on our property, and I've been wanting to see that for a long time, since we've been close partners with Phoenix on it. We've been helping advocate for the final piece of funding that needs to go into place in order for that project to start. So it was great to spend some time with them and actually see the project. They're not operational there yet, but I'd like to go back when they are, because I know sometimes the questions we get from the community are, what about the odor? What about the noise? What about any potential impacts there might be on the community? And they've done the studies and they've produced those documents in the past, but being able to see one of these plants in operation, I think will really help us be able to respond to those concerns from the community. And it's just a fantastic project, as Kelly mentioned. Really excited about it happening here. UMRA meets Friday, Finance Committee next week, External Relations Committee the week after that. And I believe that concludes my report, unless there's any questions.
On the Phoenix Energy subject, we are hopeful that we're going to be able to take advantage of the incineration, if you want to call it that process for our waste, for our solid biosolids. Are any of their other plants accepting that type of material?
They actually have a plant, at least one I know of, that I've heard Greg talk about in Eastern Europe, that is powered exclusively by biomass. And there are other facilities like that that are powered exclusively by biomass, human biomass, I should say. So yes, is the answer to that question.
Interesting.
But I do have to correct you on the incineration, as Kelly mentioned. Yeah. Phoenix gets mad at us if we say that we're burning it.
What is the term? Gasification?
Gasification. We're extracting the gas from it without burning it, which is a pretty remarkable process. Looking forward to seeing it in action here. Incidentally, I guess one thing I didn't have on my list, but since Director Cicada is not here, she would normally report out on T-Stand. There is a T-Stand meeting next week where the Phoenix Chief Operating Officer will be presenting to that group on their projects.
All right. Any questions of our general manager? Yes, no? Okay. All right, going on to board reports, information and future agenda items, starting over there with our Ebbets Pass representative.
It's been pretty quiet, but I'm, just based on what we were talking about today, and that's the fact that we're prepared for fire. We still, it was cold last night, but that doesn't stop your fire if it's gonna hit. So, I know as I say, everybody's prepared up there, so I don't want to say bring it on. I just.
Are you
Okay.
completed? Director Ratterman.
We had a very nice meeting at Mountain County's Water Resources Association last week in Placerville, a reception at two good vineyards on Main Street there in Placerville. And then we had a meeting the following day at EID. We had a very interesting presentation about Mountain Counties has involved EKI, a vendor that deals with grants and going to be helping at reduced rates for grants for any of our members, and they have a whole team. It was a very interesting one. I'm going to get the slides with the cost and get them to you. I also sent an email earlier today to Michael on getting involved with EKI, and we're looking for a ad hoc group to put together to see how that would work for individual members. But every Mountain County member is going to, has an opportunity to look for grants and to use these resources through EKI. And I'm very interested in getting more information about that and sharing it with staff, or getting staff involved at that early date.
Yeah, our district engineer will be participating in that committee.
Awesome. PCWA had planned a tour for all Mountain County's board members. That has now been canceled. I don't know if you got that yet. It won't be. We're postponed, I should say. We're very interested in doing it again. Just the timing. Too many things are going on at the dates that were selected. We'll go into CJAPA, California JPA, Joint Powers Association conference in Tahoe in September. There's a week-long conference. And the real estate committee meeting is taking place on August 26th. Make sure we get that on our calendars. And legal affairs last week. Very, very nice. Kelly, great work. Thank you for getting involved with putting our agenda together. Very colorful and informational. Those meetings and with Mia involved, and the outside presentations. I know you touched on that. I just wanted to commend both of you that how much more meat is involved in those meetings now, and knowing ahead of time what's going to be talked about is also fantastic. Thank you. That's all I got.
District 5. Division 5.
I don't have much, but I did attend the NCPA board meeting. It's really pretty astounding that when you look at all the people all the cities and the communities that are using power that's generated in Calaveras County, it's pretty incredible. And it's just a vital part of the California infrastructure. One of the most important parts, and it's ours to make sure it goes forward. So I'm looking forward to that experience. But it was great being there with the commissioners and talking to a few that I know. And you guys did do a great presentation. I think it was an eye opener for most of the people in that room, the mayors and council members and, all the other commissioners. I think it was an eye opener for them to see that. So I appreciate that. I want to congratulate Scott. You clearly are doing a good job, and, you're doing such a good job that nobody even has a single complaint, so I'm proud of you for that. I want to congratulate Patrick Roy for at least standing up. I appreciate that, Pat. I think he left us already. But it's one thing to complain. It's another thing to stand up and do something about it. So I look forward to the campaigning and debating and discussing things with Pat. I think he's a good person, and I look forward to that that effort. That's it.
All right. Michael, I wrote down something here. I should have asked you about this, but the groundwater effort that got initiated, who attended that meeting?
That was me, John Coleman, Banna, Kelly G. And then, Teresa Hitchcock and Marcos Munoz, so the CEO and the assistant CEO from the county.
So no supervisor or?
No, we've been, having some discussion, staff level discussion first. We've got some more follow up with them, and then, we're gonna schedule another meeting with.
All right. Francisco, do you have a comment?
Director's comments?
Well, I have nothing to report.
Francisco de la Cruz, curiosity question. There's been a lot of chatter over the last week and a half on your favorite social media next door about calling in and not getting answers or getting confusing answers or just general mushy complaints. And we try to direct people to their answers because a lot of the answers can be easily found on a lot of the work that Kelly's done. But I'm just wondering if any of you just monitor that for just keeping yourselves attached to the community, because despite our best efforts, there's still a lot of folks that are operating under a lack of knowledge or misconception or rumors or what have you. And I think it just destroys whatever kind of community action we can come together and help us address some of these problems as a community rather than a bunch of people just upset with things. And so I'm just wondering, do any of you just monitor that or look at it at all? And the second part of the question is, I appreciate knowing that you go to these meetings, the CCPA or all of these, but I never understand how it's helping the organization. I don't see how is your attendance there or Kelly's attendance, how is that going to change what we do here for the better? I don't see the direct connection. I understand the value of keeping in touch with your peers, et cetera, but I don't see just going to a meeting to hang out and learn stuff if nothing comes of it. And by nothing, I mean, we don't see what, okay, so you've been going to these meetings for years and stuff. How can we link your participation to the fact that, thank goodness you're doing that? I'm just having difficulty seeing that. And maybe your reports can be structured differently. Maybe to say, we went for this purpose and we achieved this and this is look for this, et cetera. Something that says, thank goodness you were there. It would have been a shame if you had missed it. Thank you.
You want to talk about NCPA and the value of going to?
If he doesn't know what the value of the NCPA is, I don't. There's
That
nothing I
would
can
be
do
off
now.
agenda as well, so we'll be bringing a discussion item on that back.
A lot of folks don't. And I tend to be, well.
But this is director's comments. Let's get on with this meeting. It's 4:00.
4:00. Yeah, I guess it is. Okay, the next board meeting will be on August 28th, followed by September 11th. That'll be the following meeting. We're going into closed session now. We have a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision D2 of the government code. One potential case. We'll be back to report any reportable action. Thank you all for coming.
Hey, Michael?
Hey, this is Cindy. Can anybody hear me?
Is this Cindy?
I looked that up.
Hi, Cindy.
The question you
Hi,
asked
you
before.
guys. I
The
have
real
been
losses are
listening.
actually like the physical.
Cindy, hold on, it's hard to hear you. Do you want
Parent
to give me a
losses
call if you have
are
a
like
question?
under metering, like we just recently changed all our meters, but many of those meters were 30 years old and we don't know if they're